Okay. So, nobody has signed up for public comments, but I'll ask for those that are here. If there is anybody who wants to make public comments, I forgot to sign up. Going once, going twice, gone. Thank you. Item number 3 is additions, deletions, and adoption of the agenda. Amanda, you have anything? I'll start down that way.
Yes, Deb is feeling under the weather, so could we move communications up a little bit?
Sure, can we make that, we'll just make that item 6 and everybody else fall down one, that's okay? That's item 11 to number 6, and then 6 becomes 7, 7 becomes 8, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
8 becomes 9, 9 becomes 10,
If the 10 becomes 11, I'm good.
maybe. Do you have anything, Bill?
No.
Okay, Paul?
The only thing I'll say is just taking the youth council update up and off. They
Oh,
have
okay.
a meeting.
Then 10 doesn't have to become 11. Sorry. I couldn't resist.
They will be
Now you
meeting
can-
after the 15th, but as I understand.
Okay. Oops. Anything else you need?
Are we adding back on the consent agenda, the Heritage Project, final plat approval?
Shelley, did you have the final document from? Okay.
I had a chance, no.
This was on the agenda for last month, but there was one item that was not on there, so we bumped it to this month, and then when we got the packet, it wasn't on the agenda this month for unknown reasons.
I wasn't aware that it, you know,
Do we have everything required?
no.
What don't we have?
I wanted specifically what was being required so I could brief the mayor.
I thought there was
Marked
only-
up version.
I thought there was only one item that was on
No,
last
sir,
month's,
there's several of them.
and there was just one thing that.
There was one thing that I recommended not approving, which was taking the building envelopes had been removed and.
And that was what was put back on.
That was put back on, but I don't know what else has been changed on. I've not seen a summary of it, and I asked for a summary.
I thought that was the only thing that was going to change.
No, there were several, there was an easement, there was some, the curb tables were changed, there was a note that was added to the plat itself. So there were several things, it was a handful of things.
And did you not receive all of the requirements?
I didn't receive all the stuff that I needed to review it. So I don't know, all I got was a Mylar, and I had asked for a paper version so that it was marked up so I could brief the mayor on it. He actually signs it.
Did you communicate what you were short?
Yes, sir, by email.
Just to clarify, the Mylar came in one day when Shelley was not here, and I got it from Travis and gave it to Shelley, and then I believe she did send an email to Travis asking for a paper copy and a list of the changes.
List the changes in a digital version. We've kind of initiated a process where we want digital versions of stuff instead of having all these Mylars, which don't do us a big good, so.
I'm sorry, I just thought this was a cosmetic minor change from last month.
I wouldn't say that any of this is a cosmetic change in that you are dealing with amendments to a plat that has already been approved.
Right.
We did shorten the version of it up. In other words, instead of going back through the whole cycle of having a plat reviewed by the planning board and then coming to the board, there is a provision where at the suggestion of the mayor, he can put it on the agenda to have the board approve it. I was not communicated with it that it was coming back on the agenda, and I just got the stuff like last Thursday, which was, beyond when the agenda items is.
Can we do this? Can we have a motion that basically, can we put it on the agenda and then have a motion that basically says once Shelley gets all the information, rather than wait till next month, that I can sign it whatever it is,
Maybe-
a week or two, something like that.
Yeah, but we can't put that on consent, though, we have to put that.
No, we need to put that on the agenda then.
Okay.
I'm
Well, I would
suggesting
motion-
an alternative.
My suggestion would be to add that to the agenda.
So are we saying that Shelley would get everything she needs and then send it to you?
Yeah, I was under the impression these were minor cosmetic changes. There was a stamp on page 1, there was a building envelope that was on the original plan that was removed and then was put back on. And other than that, I didn't know of any other changes.
Can we make it item number 11 then, please?
Sure.
Since we don't remove 11?
How do you want that worded?
I think that's it, well, how do I want that worded? Motion that the mayor can sign off on the revisions, based upon, because I think the engineers looked at it,
Engineers looked at it.
and Shelley has the opportunity to review it based on the changes, the items she requested.
Right. Is that satisfactory?
I'm good with that.
You got that? Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mike?
That was the only thing.
Okay, I'm going to, item 17, I'm gonna make that 17A, which is the planning and hiring, update on the hiring of the planning and zoning administrator. And then I'm gonna add, if it's okay, an item B, consider extension of the in-focus contract. I'm gonna say for the remainder of 2018-2019 fiscal year. And then item number C, 17C, sorry, is, I've already asked Cheryl to do this, but I'm gonna put it down as an agenda item. Request Cheryl to survey other towns for benefits. And you'll hear why when we get to the item. Anything else, anyone? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve as agenda, as amended?
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. All those in favor? Thank you. Item number 4 is consider approval of consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion, a second. Any discussion?
Just one question, we get to the code enforcement report, is this what we're gonna do here?
Mhm.
The information we have here?
The code enforcement was in your,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just want to have this one question about the, I know it's labeled on here, illegal car lot a couple times, but, is that something we've been able to look at or whatever?
One of the things I'm going to do, which is why I asked for additional discussion, is reach out and speak to code enforcement, Bill, myself, okay, because we talked about a process 6 months ago, I think, we gave them, and so, we're not saying, I mean, it was discussed last meeting, so, I mean, it was sort of a lack of anything going on or coming off. Something may new come on, but very little goes off. So, and I'd really like to understand why we should see progression steps so things happen. Fair enough?
It's good, that's,
No? If you have a specific question, shoot it to me, so when I call them, I'll ask. Okay?
we'll talk about it.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All those in favor of the motion to the consent agenda? Okay, unanimous, thank you. Item number 5 is the proclamation for Red Ribbon Week issued by the mayor. So, let me get to it. Okay, so proclamation for Red Ribbon Week, whereas communities across America have been plagued by the numerous problems associated with illicit drug use and those that traffic in them, and whereas there is hope in winning the war on drugs, and that hope lies in education and drug reduction demand reduction, coupled with the hard work and determination of organizations such as the Mecklenburg County Young Marines of the Marine Corps League to foster a healthy drug-free lifestyle, and whereas governments and community leaders Know that citizen support is one of the most effective tools in the effort to reduce the use of illicit drugs in our communities. And whereas the red ribbon has been chosen as a symbol commemorating the work of Enrique Kiki Camarena, a Drug Enforcement Administration special agent who was murdered in the line of duty and represents the belief that one person can make a difference. And whereas the Red Ribbon Campaign was established by Congress in 1988 to encourage a drug-free lifestyle and involvement in drug prevention and reduction efforts, and whereas October 23rd to 31st has been designated National Red Ribbon Week, which encourages Americans to wear a red ribbon to show their support for a drug-free environment. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Brad S. Horvath, Mayor of the Village of Wesley Chapel, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim October 23rd to 31st, 2018 as Red Ribbon Week in Wesley Chapel, North Carolina, and urge all citizens to join with me in this special observance. A witness whereof I should say, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the village to be affixed this, says 15th day of October, it's actually 8th day of October, but anyway.
You have to wait a week.
Okay. And thank you for allowing me to read that. Okay. The new item 6 is the Communications Committee update.
Sorry, feeling bad, Deb.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to go a little earlier. Communications Committee has welcomed a new member, so we now have 4. Dana Grossman. She's lived in the village for 17 years and she's friends with Alan Tate. Okay. At our last meeting, we continued our discussion on branding Wesley Chapel. Some of the things the committee came up with are obviously the Dogwood Blossom, which is our seal, the dome at the shopping center, town hall, Dogwood Park, Shiloh Church, Wesley Chapel Elementary School. And we'd like to see if there are other things that people associate with Wesley Chapel. When our Facebook page goes live, we would like to poll our citizens about images that represent Wesley Chapel to them. We felt Facebook would be a very good informal method to do that. And speaking of dogwoods, we have the dogwood flower for our town seal, but I don't know of any place in Wesley Chapel where we have an abundance of dogwoods.
In the park.
Dogwood Park.
Besides the park. So we were talking about it. I mean, the bloom, the dogwood bloom is so beautiful. If you can imagine the entire town embracing dogwood trees and planting them, citizens in their yards and here in town hall and other places, so that people, when they ride through, they could be, we are known as the dogwood city or town or village rather. So the committee even discussed having like a dogwood day or a dogwood festival in the park and with all kind of activities, and among those being to plant a dogwood tree. That could be kind of like a theme. Plant a dogwood tree at one time of, in your yard or whatever, like Arbor Day or something. So, and we were saying, since Wesley Chapel was named after John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist Church, we think that a dogwood tree, often used as a symbol of faith, would be very appropriate. So we are in our 4th month of discussion with the council about the village Facebook page, and which still remains invisible to the public. And brainstorming other ways to make the page useful, the committee felt announcing road closings due to construction, flooding, or accidents, obviously in upcoming events, would be an excellent use of the page. And in our ongoing research and discussion about the archiving service for the Facebook page, there seems to be a consensus that our page may not need an archiving service. So we're still looking at that. There's a possibility that we don't, if we just do like snapshots of any areas that could be controversial or whatever, that could suffice. If council, however, decides it wants a archiving service to handle that, the committee unanimously approves SMARSH and recommends SMARSH. It's an American company. It offers more for the money, and it has only 1-year contract, whereas the other one we talked to had a 3-year contract. The committee's next meeting is September 25th at 7 p.m. here, and you're obviously welcome to attend.
Did you say September 20th?
I'm sorry, October 20th.
You're a leader or just, okay, all right.
No, I wrote this about an hour ago, so I'm kind of, sorry, my brain's not working. You're welcome to attend. This includes my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. Yes, sir.
Are you communicating to all the residents now through either the Sunshine List or anything like that?
No more. I'm not soliciting any comments or anything from them. I'm reading comments that go to different venues, but I'm not soliciting anything.
So is Facebook going to be your primary?
It will be
Venue.
the beginning. It will be, but also want to do Twitter, which is really popular right now, especially with the younger folk. And, and also we're talking about newsletters. We're talking about sending out, not a monthly thing, but electronic newsletters. And but we'd have to have a mailing list for that. And I think we have some on the town signed up for that. But we're just, looking at different ways, but we really want to get the Facebook page out first. And then we can kind of go through that, get suggestions from the public. If we could get that two-way communication with the public, it would really help us do our job.
Yeah, I know the Parks and Rec Committee was looking for ways to advertise their upcoming events. And we said, well, we have a communications committee now, it's just not up off the ground yet.
Yeah, well, we're off the ground. We just, have to go through the governmental procedures to make things happen.
I appreciate your time on that.
I'm sorry, so what's left to really get that Facebook live?
Getting the attorneys rewritten. He said he's made some changes to the Facebook policy that we wrote.
Okay.
And so just getting that and then you guys approving it and then giving us the clearance to make it live. That's it. It's there, it's filled out, we have things on it. It's ready to go. We're just waiting on the legal aspects and then your approval to make that happen.
Okay, do we ever work on the ability of somebody to make a derogatory comment and have that? I know originally I proposed that maybe there's like a 24-hour delay before posting comes live. Is that something you guys considered, or?
Well, what we can do is if you can put out keywords with an archiving service. You can do that. We would have to maintain close monitoring on the Facebook page. If somebody said something derogatory, then we would hide it, that they call hiding it, which means no one could see it. Now, the person who made that comment could still see it, but no one else could. And that way it will still be there in case we need any evidence or proof or what have you in the future. It would still be there for us to be able to reach, but the public wouldn't be able to see it. But as far as the delay, 24-hour delay, it kind of defeats the purpose of being able to get on there as a conversation, and it makes a lot more work for the committee to have to read and approve, and who's going to approve.
And I'm not on Facebook or Twitter. I'm on nothing. So I'm
You're on
completely off
nothing.
the grid. So I don't know exactly how it works. I know it's there and everybody's used it, but I'm just curious. So that's fine. If
Well,
someone always looking at it.
Yes, sir. And talking to other towns, I find that there's very, very few negative comments, obscenities, written, whatever, in their Facebook pages. This just doesn't happen very often. And when there is something that's a little bit, then it's easily hidden. But there's not been any reports that that's been a real problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Anything else, Clay?
Anything else we can do?
NyQuil.
Just get that
Advil.
Facebook policy approved, and we'll be good.
Well, to Mike's comment, with the huge chamber, we're able to put events up on the chamber's website, on the calendar.
See, that's perfect. That's exactly what we would love to have, input like that, to find out different ways of doing our job. So, all right, well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to pop out of here.
Would you like to
Feel better.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for the work you and team are doing.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think it's very important, and I want to get that rolling. So it sounds like we should be in a position maybe next month to approve that, George?
Yeah, in fact, I actually thought I'd already sent it, but Cheryl asked me about today, and I apparently did. So it's sitting. I've got it. I can send it in the morning tomorrow. I made a note about it.
Appreciate it, thanks.
Do we need to pre-approve pending George's release of the,
Well, if we want to,
I just don't want to be sitting.
We haven't seen it.
next week.
we haven't seen it.
Well, I sent all of you the Facebook policy that we wrote, and he had some tweaks to make. So you have seen the Facebook policy. We haven't done a social media. We're still working on that. It will be much more detailed.
But not 2 weeks.
I'm sorry?
but not the tweaks.
Oh, not the tweets.
I think that's only fair to council. I mean, as much as I really, I want to get it going too, so. Okay, thank you. Brandon,
I don't see it. No.
come on down.
Alrighty, guess I'm starting back in July. There were a few things in July. There was a larceny or attempted larceny break-in of a car. I believe it was at Hickory Tavern. Couple larcenies at Target, motor vehicle theft, Potter's Bluff. The address where it happened is had problems with drugs in and out of there, so it wouldn't shock me if that was related. July, there was a death investigation. That was the one where the guy was murdered in Charlotte and found his body on Juketown. That's what that was. That was pretty much it for July. Not a whole lot in July. August, car B&Es were, in I think August and September, car B&Es were way up. Again, the majority of them unlocked, firearms getting taken out, which I never will understand why people put firearms in a vehicle. To me, I think, and I won't go on that soapbox. Shoplifting at Target, the Verizon store got broken into around 2:30 in the morning. And again, they're going in and swiping the iPhones off the display and selling them on the black market. But they can't, they'll sell them, and the person buying them doesn't know they can't use them because they got the phones locked down. So, there was 5 car B&Es. They were all in Hunters Point, Winding Lane area. And I believe there was some in Weddington too, so they just hit that whole area. Larceny at Target, another larceny from Verizon, AT&T. It just seems like they're switching between AT&T and Verizon. About once every month or so they'll come and hit. And this, from what I've seen and heard, I think it's the same people. But that was it for August. September, like I said, more car B&Es. These were all in the Potter's Trace neighborhood. There was 6 there, and they were all unlocked. A couple of the drug arrests, and I think that was about it. But the big thing for, like I said, in August, September was car break-ins. I don't know what the cause was in the spike in that. I really don't. But that's all I have, unless y'all have questions. Or
Brandon, these reports you left on our desk are useful. What period of time is this specifically for?
Oh, those are ones I had Cheryl print. Those are the alarm
Okay.
calls for 3 years. So
Oh, okay.
2016, 17, and 18. When we met with Brandon, the supervisor, in May, we talked about the time that Brandon wastes responding to alarm calls. So Brandon is also going to run a repeat. He's asked the report.
I'm just waiting on a report back for all the false alarms for those 3 years. Because I know Weddington and Martin, they all have alarm notices.
What are these? Is this for a month, for a year?
That's for a year.
Okay.
I can't say for sure, but I know they get like 2 or 3 alarms, and then the next fine, it starts out at one limit, and then the next one is this much, and the third one is this much. Personally, I think it helps out having an ordinance, because like you said, it reduces us having to go out there time and time again to the same house. And, they give us an alarm, and it's the same activation over and over, so we know it's false alarm. So,
And I'll volunteer if it's okay to reach out to Marvin and Weddington and find out how they enforce it. Like, what's the paperwork on the back end? What happens if somebody doesn't pay?
And it's just like I was telling Amanda, I know the deputy in Marvin, every month he'll review the reports to see which ones were false. And then he'll forward that to somebody from the town, whether it be the clerk or whatever, and then they'll send out the notices in the mail. Hey, you owe this much for false alarm on date and time.
Are you able to identify the actual individual house or property?
We can, but we can't give that out because it's not public record.
Well,
So,
I mean,
Is
it's
that-
like 282 or whatever, if 15 of those were from the same resident or property.
I would venture to say she could probably print out something like that. I don't know how much time consuming that would be. But I sent her an email today. I don't know if she was off because of the holiday or what, but I'm just waiting to hear back from her.
But that ordinance basically, does it fix this problem?
I think it would, yes.
The lieutenant, I can't remember his name, can you remember his name? No, I'm terrible with names, no. The Indian Trail.
Coble, Captain Coble.
Yes, Captain. One rank. Captain Coble had said, he had seen a reduction when they put that in place because, you know, there's no reason you're gonna get your alarm system fixed.
Unless there's a reason,
Well,
financial.
Unless there's a reason to do it.
I said this too, and I sound, and I was bad, but you start hitting people in the pocketbook that have these numerous false alarms, they're gonna get their alarm fixed.
Right.
Because they don't have to keep getting the bill in the mail, hey, you owe this much. So, and it cuts down on us having to go out there time and time again.
Well, and secondly, let you respond to, thirdly, whatever we're up to, respond to real events, which is even more critical, so.
How would we, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna tell the people in the audience, in 2016, there were 306 alarm calls, 2017, 282, and so far in 2018, there've been 187 alarm calls in Wesley Chapel.
I just wondered how we would have to send that out to everybody and let them know, so they have a warning that it's gonna happen like that. We have a new ordinance.
Our Facebook page.
Well, I think
And we
I
put
think
it
the
on the
warning,
website.
Website list or website or, yeah.
Have all of it.
but Bill, I think the warning of the first time is what, you know.
Yeah, and again, I don't know exactly what the other town's process is. If they get a letter in the mail saying, hey, you know, sheriff's office responded out here, false alarm. Next time you're gonna get, you know, penalized. I don't know how exactly.
You offer to do that, right?
I'll research
See that, yeah.
Cool.
Because even if we decide not to proceed with an ordinance, we probably need to know if they're a repeat offender.
Mhm.
That maybe we could just sit down with you and talk to them and say, hey, our deputy's wasting time coming out because your dog sets off your alarm.
Right. Absolutely. Great.
Well, and
So that happens a lot too. You know, you go in there and you hear a big dog barking when you get out of the car, you know what set it off. So.
Mhm.
well,
So the fun thing is they clear the house when the dog's in there.
Right. My neighbor actually had his alarm go off last week because they had a birthday and the balloons were just floating around and it just set off the sensor.
I had that happen at the elementary school quite a bit. They had stuff in the cafeteria and it was almost daily it would go off.
Every time the air conditioning kicks on, it blows stuff
That's what
around.
happened, balloon across the room.
All right, anything else for Brandon?
No, just, you are coming to the fall bash.
Yes, sir.
Work the crowd, make your face known.
You gonna sit in the water tank?
Depends on how hot it is.
It's been hot. I mean, you probably have pretty good luck now.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I'll, do you know if they've hired off duty for the park or for the event?
That'll be a solid question.
I'll be there.
I'm sure she's,
No. Okay.
she's at least made the contact. She doesn't have anybody assigned to it yet.
All right.
And we want you in the park, not across the people across the street.
Thank you.
That way you can get some candy and
Like
some
that
costumes and
Like I do.
maybe be a judge for one of the costume
All
contests or
right,
something.
let's move on. Item number 8 is the finance officer's report.
Okay, speaking of the fall bash, I've only gotten one invoice from them so far, although I've heard about several, so I guess I'll be getting them closer to the event.
Basically, what Blacktopper, Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks and Rec, request of the town is to pay for things like the additional sinks, porta pots, not the deputies, surprisingly, and
That's the only one I've got.
Yeah, we're still
I've heard
almost,
there's
not a
one
month
on
out, but
Fridays.
3 weeks out.
And I also have not gotten any notice, so we could post it to the sunshine list. I don't know what the hours are or anything.
There's a meeting tomorrow regarding that, so
Okay.
you should
Make sure
make sure that
they
they
get a copy.
you get a copy.
There you go.
As far as the financials, as of the end of September, we are in the red, almost $122,000, which just shows you that we do need to keep fund balance, or we would be in debt if we didn't have cash to fund that. It's a lot bigger than it used to be. At the end of last year, our revenue, including $70,652 of fee in lieu, was $714,867. Our expenses was $775,521, so we had a decrease in fund balance of $60,654 for last year. You had asked for that. We continue to pay our normal bills. One thing that happened during the month that's a little different is we had a cash bond from Bonterra for Wesley Manor, about $151,000 in cash that we were holding for them. And they are in the process, I think they've already closed, that they've been bought by Taylor Morrison. So they wanted to turn that cash bond into a bond. So George looked at the format, and I gave them back the $151,000 cash, and they gave us a bond for that. So just so you know.
Can you clarify what's the difference is between a cash bond and a bond?
Yeah, cash is cash.
Yeah.
A bond is,
Bond's an insurance surety company that says if something happens, they'll pay for it.
it's something that if the developer didn't do what they're supposed to do, we could call it in.
Our ordinances don't care one way or the other.
No.
No.
Does that show up as money in our accounts as a bond, or like the cash would, or is it?
The cash shows up in the balance sheet as cash, and then there's a corresponding,
Both sides.
a liability escrow from developers.
Okay.
Right now, we are still holding $45,000 cash. So I just wanted you to know about that. I don't think there's anything unusual during the month.
You didn't have any Lowe's charges, Lowe's credit card charges?
No, we have not. In fact, I just gave Mike the Lowe's credit card last week, I think it was. And there has not been any charges on it yet.
I saw September 13th, we had a charge of $38 for a bank fee. What was that for?
Yeah, every month they charge us for service fees.
I mean, we must do a lot of banking now. How come we're paying fees?
We do.
Is that, what is it, is it just because there's, I know, like even for me, my business or my personal, I don't pay any fees because I keep a balance in there, or?
They have to do different things for a public entity, public funds. They have to collateralize it and it costs them more. And yes, there are service fees, yes. You won't find anybody that, in government, that gets free service, even the county and all. And if they think they are, it's because they're not getting interest.
Which we were getting interest. I think, I saw an interest number on there. What was that, Cheryl?
Pardon?
We are getting interest. I saw that.
We do get interest, yeah.
There it is.
I know a few years ago when things really have changed a lot in banking and for government and banking, and it used to be sweeter for the towns. And I remember a few years ago, there was one year the county, was all the money the county had, and I'm afraid it was Wells Fargo, that they actually paid for Wells Fargo to hold on to their money for them. It was a net loss even after the interest, so.
Okay, anything for Cheryl? She didn't have, you said that was it? Okay, anything for Cheryl? Okay, thanks, Cheryl. Next item is the planning board report. John?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Talk about our planning board from last month, September 24th, and talk about what's on our agenda, which is pretty exciting here for October 22nd. So the last planning board, we actually had a great showing. The mayor showed up, my co Paul, and it was a really good showing. We had some great conversations. One of the things I brought up, and I was asking the mayor, of course, now that we've had Florence, the hurricane come through, you know, we spent a lot of time on the planning board going over stormwater ordinance, right? And we paid for Bonnie to come in and educate us a little bit, and really spent a lot of time overhauling that. So I was wondering if, you know, we could start keeping track of any anything that comes in as a result of the hurricane, because this is a really great chance to see how well are we doing, how well are we not doing. You know, is our ordinance too restrictive? Because we just had a hurricane come through, and if it was, that everything looks great, well then, do we asking for too much? It's a great question. So that being said, did we, Cheryl or Mayor, did we get anything since our last planning board meeting about
I did not.
the hurricane?
Cheryl, you see anything?
No?
I heard a few things about people talking about stuff falling in there, like, but they were county subdivisions, weren't they?
Somebody had called me before the hurricane, concerned about something, but yeah,
So I have to remember that too. A lot of people might complain about it in our county. Like the Price Mill Walking Trail flooded
Okay.
and the sewers were overflowing on our walking trail.
Wow.
But that was a county approved, and we have pictures and stuff to prove it, but that was a county approved subdivision.
Hmm.
no complaints were received.
Right. So it's interesting that, you know, when we get heavy rains, right, we'll get a lot, I think you guys probably field a lot of questions about flooding, whether it's behind someone's home or, you know, water. But we just got this huge hurricane that came through, where it rained for, let's say, 7 inches over the course of a day or so. And we held up okay. And we had some road closures, right? And those came and went. So that leaves us with a question, you know, are we good with what we have? Or do we need to go back and reevaluate?
And it was the 100-year storm.
Right.
So,
Right. So how do you guys feel? Do you think we're good with the storm? I mean, now that it's been, you know, a solid month or more since the hurricane.
I can tell you that we had over 173 road closures in Union County, and I didn't hear a single complaint. Well, I didn't hear somebody complaining that they were surprised with the amount of rain we had, with the amount of road closures we had. I think they understood it was a hurricane. So, it was really bringing my phone off the hook, complaining about, well, why is my road flooded? It's a hurricane.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point. If it was just a heavy rain and the road was flooded, would
that
that
would
be?
be a different issue.
Right.
I didn't get any, I didn't anybody call me up and say, we need to fix something, because they all understood what the conditions were.
Right.
I
Okay.
don't see a need if it's bomb-proof for a hurricane. I don't see the need to try and readjust it, because then you just start getting into a moving target. And so, well, maybe we adjusted it too much, and we're back in here discussing it nauseum, more finite details. It's bomb-proof for a hurricane. Let's roll with it. Okay.
You know, like a lot of stormwater holding facilities, right? I mean, we talk about the 100-year storm or the 20-year, 50-year. So we finally had that. We finally get a chance to evaluate it. Does it really work? Or does it not work? I mean, it was a great measuring stick, I think, to have that hurricane come through and, you know, retrospectively look back at.
I think Cheryl sent a note out to the planning board, or whatever, I saw before the meeting. There needs to be noted that there is a distinction between our storm drain ordinances versus the county. That when we do accept other subdivisions in that have been planned or approved under county guidelines, can't go back and revisit that stuff.
Right.
So.
Typically, the complaints that I've seen in my history here have been more about, usually, almost always, something under construction, and they don't have their complete stormwater retention in place. And, you know, there's dirt being washed over to the neighbors. It's happened right here when they're building this facility that's not open yet, but, I mean, you know, dirt was washing across the road into to my old subdivision, Lindenwood, into their pond, so. But typically, when construction is done, I won't say we're clean, but, you know, I think we do a reasonable job because we set a higher standard. Then, well, the county doesn't have a standard, so I guess anything would be a higher standard. But, that being said, I don't think it's unreasonable. You know, a developer may disagree with me, and that's fine, it's a good conversation we can have. Or then maybe that's a way to ask when a developer comes forward.
Good question, right?
You know,
So for now, I think we're good then on the stormwater ordinance and.
I think we're good. I mean, I'm not speaking only for myself, so.
I didn't see anything crazy here. My neighborhood was absolutely fine too. No flooding at all.
All right, very good. All right, so the other thing we did our last planning board meeting was we spent some significant time talking about the solar generating facility ordinance draft, right? Our goal by the end of the evening was to have something that we feel good putting it down on paper as a draft to bring up in our next planning board meeting. Because so next planning board meeting, we got our speaker coming in. So part of that was inviting everyone here from council. I understand we're inviting other towns in as well. And the speakers asked for between an hour and an hour and a half to present and Q&A. So I definitely encourage everyone to show up. So our goal was to present him with a written ordinance that we have that we're drafting and to talk on behalf of that. So, you know, how do you think about our setbacks? What do you think about our minimum acreage? What do you know, all those things that we put in there that we spent a lot of time discussing. We'd love his, you know, his response on that, as well as just talking about specifics and details in general throughout the state of solar generating facilities.
I know I'm planning on being to that event. I think, Cheryl, I think we can prove to go ahead and put out a potential quorum of council for that meeting. I don't know about who else is coming, but I expect, he's only going to give this presentation once. He's not going to come and do it again to council, so.
That's great. You sure this is coming from Raleigh, is that right?
I think so, and I'm curious what his perspective is. He an energy industry advocate, or is he, you know,
Right.
where is he coming from?
So yeah, I think that's right. Come on from Raleigh's person to come on.
Who's paying them? That's the, that'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that'd be a great question to clarify right off the bat.
Right.
When we start, so if there's a skewed perspective.
And doesn't, one doesn't mean it's skewed either. It just says you need that as a balancing to what's being heard.
Exactly.
And also when you ask a contrary question to see what the response is. I mean, you can be paid by somebody. Actually, I probably shouldn't have brought it up that way, but I did. But I think it's fair to understand that at least because of.
Have you invited the folks from the Union County Planning Board?
Sure, you did the invitations, is that correct?
No, I did not do him. I believe Deb did.
Deb did? I'm not sure you did.
I think she did.
Yeah, I don't know. He was back in
Yeah. Is the administrative assistant. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing it. Yeah.
And so our expectation is, like I said, to review what we've drafted, listen, discuss it. If there's any changes, my expectation is we can make those changes there, hopefully, unless there's any more research needed on this changing. But make those changes, you know, my goal is to vote on it and send it to you guys after our next meeting.
Great.
Even if we have to make some changes.
That's appreciated.
Yeah.
That's, that meeting, just for council reminder, is October 22nd.
Correct, October 22nd.
Yeah. So they're meeting with the experts will be talking, so.
That's good. All right, the other thing we postponed to our next meeting is the land use plan amendment process draft. And I want to talk about this a little bit because I went back and listened actually to the video the last time I was here in the council meeting. And George, you spoke on behalf of this land use plan amendment process. And I went back and listened a couple of times to what you said. And actually, I just want to say, I personally, and I'm going to go into our next meeting probably talking about this, was I think what you said really hit home. I think that made sense. And I'm going to go back, talk to the planning board, at least from my perspective, is I don't think we should have a land use plan amendment process, right? So I'm gonna go back and say, similar to what you said, was that's our plan. You know, it's not, it's the town's plan. For someone to come in and ask and make a change to it, it only makes sense for them to come in and ask for a zoning request, and we see if that, you know, makes sense towards our plan or not. And then we change our plan. But for someone to come in and say, I want to change your land use plan, I want to set up, you know, public meetings, I want to have a long drawn out process, it doesn't make sense. And correct me if I'm wrong, George, but I think that's what I heard you say.
I certainly suggested that that's,
Yeah. So that's what I'm gonna go back and talk with, planning board next month on, or this, in October, and, we're gonna hopefully review that if we have time. And this may be a long meeting at the solar generating facility, but that's also going to be next month. And lastly is, you know, we're still, reviewing, the subdivision ordinance, preventing clear cutting, retention of existing vegetation. Deb Bledsoe and Dr. Ellis, again, is heading up kind of that subcommittee that's, putting that together for us. They did a fantastic job of putting together some folders. They pulled out everything in our ordinance with text related to this. So it's coming from all different chapters and have it one location. So our goal is, once we have time, you know, to review this with them, is to go through all those different pieces from all of our different ordinance, whether it's from subdivisions or whether it's from our land use plan that talks about retaining existing vegetation. Find a way to condense that all. So that is still on our agenda. Okay?
Yeah, John, I don't know if this week, but one of the things that we had on our code enforcement report was someone that had said, illegal tree cutting, clear evidence of tree cutting, but unable to determine how many or what size. I mean, I thought it was, I mean, we're gonna talk about it, it was just ridiculous, because you could just go look at the stumps. I don't think he cut them and then ground down every stump in there, but that would probably be towards what you're looking at, the clear cutting thing.
Would that be in a subdivision?
It doesn't give me an address, it just gives an, I guess, a plot number here. It was on June 18th. It's just weird, that's why I really wanted to talk about this.
It was in Wesley Pond.
Oh, was it on subdivision?
And the homeowners did, Mr. Como might be able to address it, did remove some trees, and we're currently, you know, he's gonna replace them. He's gonna replace them.
Was that on his own doing, or did he get prompted to, maybe good idea to do it?
Well, some of them, I think, were damaged or sick, so he took some out, but it was hard to determine exactly how many were there and what he took. But you could tell there had been some taken out. Yes, the homeowner did it.
Bill, to answer your question.
He didn't do it, just, he did it, you know, to clear out some sick and dead trees, but he did do it without permission.
That was one of the things I asked planning board to address, specifically when they're reviewing our tree save ordinance, is to put something in there which we never really accounted for in the past, which was, if you're gonna remove a sick or dying tree, you still have to mitigate for that tree. So if you got a tree that's leaning at a 45-degree angle and it's about to fall on your house, are you allowed to go out and cut it down? And if you do, if it was a dead tree hanging, you know, over your back deck, and you cut it down, would you have to mitigate for that? But the town has a copy of this specific incident, has a copy of the contract from the arborist, identifying how many trees were cut
Oh, okay.
and why they were cut.
So we're requiring this individual to replace trees?
Well, see, that's the thing. According to our ordinance, it doesn't matter if the tree's dead or not. If you cut down a tree that's a certain diameter, you have to mitigate the tree. But I would think, logic tells me that if you're gonna cut down a dead tree that's this diameter versus a live tree, the rules should be somewhat different. I mean, if you have a tree in your backyard that was dead and leaning over, would you go down and cut it down?
What's interesting, my neighbor had a Bradford pear tree, which he just cut that thing down. Does he need to go back and replace that from storm damage?
What I'd like to suggest is if you want to talk about this, let's put it on
Yeah.
the agenda.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we were hoping that it was to go through the review process with the planning board first.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. All right, you guys need anything else from me?
Anything going to ask for John?
Comments?
Thanks, John.
You guys need to stick around?
People asking about joining the planning board or expressing interest to be on the committee?
I have not heard anything.
We have all the seats filled plus the alternates.
We do. I think we've had some pretty significant attendance issues with some of the alternates. We're trying to address that.
Thank you. Yes, Shelley.
If I could, I do have a couple updates on my report since it's done, you know, at least 2 weeks in advance. You may have noticed that Dunkin' Donuts has arrived in the old TCBY thing. And also Quinessa's Amenity Center has started. They're doing land clearing and they're installing their BMP, so that has started.
That's fine, this is the beginning of that. Just-
Quinessa Amenity Center has started.
Okay,
I
thank
always
you.
like to tell you all things like TQY.
That's good stuff.
Well, it looks like the Ridge is getting ready to get started as well.
So he's got some big tractors there now.
He hasn't come forward
Sorry?
for the parcel on 84 that was approved for senior.
The Ridge.
The Ridge.
The Ridge has changed ownership.
Right.
So we are starting, I got some paperwork today where Union County had approved, they had authorized them to do some construction. There's nothing has started as of yet. But looks like it's getting on the horizon where they're gonna start work.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. I will say, I was at that meeting, it was a lot of I thought a lot of good questions and discussion around the solar generating farm, so I appreciated it. All right, skipping youth council, park and rec, John's not here, are you gonna do anything then?
Yeah, I've got some updates I can give
Okay.
before we get into the new stuff. One thing that came in recently was this North Carolina Division of Parks and Recreations. This deals with the railroad expansion. The issue came down is they're going to need an updated as-built plan. And the question that Parks and Rec Committee had, I think we should ask this as well as council, is we already have an as-built plan. If the DOT comes in and changes what the park looks like, do we have to pay for the changes to the do we have to pay the architect to redo the as-built plans, or does the DOT handle that? I mean, they're the ones coming in and making the changes. That's
Guess we should ask DOT, I don't know.
either get that or get George involved if it's something that, if somebody comes in, eminent domain takes your property and pays you for it, do they have to pay all the expenses associated with that?
Well, what expenses do you mean?
Well, the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund that we got the money from to buy the property that the park sits on, wanted an updated as-built plan after the DOT takes part of the frontage of the park for the new road. And that's not a cheap thing to do, to go to the architect and say, please read. I mean, it's basically a straight line in red on a map, but the question is who should have to pay for that, the DOT or the town?
Generally speaking, you're just required to pay what the value is that you're taking, not incidental costs that you might need for things going forward, so generally speaking.
But when we started the process back when David Caffhammer was mayor, that was one thing that we made them promise us, that we would not incur any costs, so we probably could get Liz and the other people to do it.
But this is being, well, yeah, I mean, so, but they're not filing it in the domain action, right? I mean, this is a negotiated transfer of the property, so.
Right.
I mean,
Well, this came in the day after our last council meeting, and it was one of those things hanging in the air that we need to get clarification on. And I just want to impress the council and staff to understand what's going on with that.
I mean, you can negotiate anything short of the eminent domain proceeding.
Okay. Brief upgrade on the irrigation and electrical upgrades. I sent council out an email on Friday that the irrigation and the electrical upgrades are progressing. It's not 100% complete. All the digging and trenching is complete in the park. The only thing we're left to do is to hook up the pump that pumps the water out of the pond for the irrigation system, and that'll be completed by the 19th. I was also in contact with the landscaper, so they know that they're going to try to do grass seeding had aerating just before then, so that once the grass seed's on the ground, we can start getting some water on it. The other thing to update council on is we had the grant workshop last week. Pam, Cheryl, and was it Beth? Cheryl? All attended a conference call with part of, it was with part of, correct?
Yeah, it was just here, we just had it on the computer.
So they did a workshop specifically on grants, because we will be entering that probably first of the year. Also, to update you, there's a park conference in Winston-Salem, October 24th and 26th. I don't think there's going to be any cost to attend this. I think we get the, as parks people, I think we can get the vendors to probably pick up the cost for us. But that's coming up 24th and 26th. I was planning on going to that, and maybe John Lepke as well. The other stuff we have on the agenda, which is the park gate, the band shell, and the concrete parking stops, is coming up later, so I'll skip over that. I expected John to be here, so I don't have anything else that I can think of right off the bat, project-wise. Everything else is going to be coming under the next topic, which is band shell.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
What would you, might want to hold off on the overseeding and aeration?
We're going to talk about that when we get to the band shell project. The trenching and everything that was done for the irrigation and the electrical upgrades really tore up the grass. I think I sent a few pictures out to council between the tractors that were running back and forth, the heavy equipment, the materials. It beat up the yard pretty poorly. I think the band shell, when we start on that, which I think is going to be the first part of November, is going to probably do pretty much the same thing. They're going to be bringing in materials, they're going to be bringing in trucks, everything else. So we'll talk about that when we get further down on the agenda. Any questions?
No, but since you brought up the NCDOT and Pardiff letter, which we talked about at the last meeting, and Pardiff made their letter back with their requirements, which included that survey. They included all of the funds that NCDOT was paying the village, which included the actual purchase of the property they're taking, which is almost 3/4 of an acre. And then there was portions for easements, permanent easement and temporary construction easement. And then there were monies for, I forget what it's called, improve, I have it here. Improve, I have it. For the value improvements acquired, which include the fence and trees replacement essentially. So I called Kyle today and made him aware that I don't think that at least the 19,000 should be included in that, and so he wanted me to email him on it, even though the letter says call. So I emailed him on. He's by himself right now in his defense. It's typically, I think, a 3-person committee that does the part of, and there's only one doing it right now. So, so anyway, I sent him the information. We'll see what he says.
Also, there was, in the temporary construction easement, there was a small corner of the existing dog park. They said that they would be willing to work around that small, we're talking about an area 8-10 feet long by about 2 feet wide. It's in the temporary construction easement. The gentleman from the DOT said, when they looked at it on site, they said they would be able to work around that so that the dog park would not have to be torn down, even part of it. So,
Have they done the staking yet?
no, and I did send them an email this week, or last week, I should say, about that. But they said there's some kind of a delay. You know, there's always a delay with the DOT, but
Well, that's fine. They have it on their agenda, and that's to stake out exactly where the lines are going to be. There was some question back and forth, so we, and they actually the gentleman who was here thought they had already staked it, which they hadn't, and so.
We had a
we'll have them
meeting
stake
here,
it.
we had a meeting here with Brad, myself, and John Lepke, the Parks Committee Chairman, and then Brad had to go, but John and I went out to the park and physically looked at the space. And they were surprised it wasn't already marked, and they're fine with marking.
They made a commitment to do it, yep.
But they were also saying that there will probably be no shovel in the dirt in 2019, and the project probably won't start until 2020. So anything we have planned for 2019 is fine. We'll have plenty of time to remove the existing split rail fence if we want to use the materials. So I see that being done in the spring.
Okay.
Oh, one last thing regarding that area. The temporary construction easement, we get that back almost as soon as the project's completed. But the easement between the roadway, the new roadway, and the park, we were allowed to build in that easement. So if we want to put the split rail fence back up, we can, but we have to know that we're building in an easement, and if they need to come in for whatever reason, they can tear down that fence.
Typically, it's a utility easement, and in this case, there are no underground utilities on that side, there's only overhead wires. So the fact is, this should not be a problem. Unless they decide to put underground utilities sometime. They won't pull the fence back out again.
Yeah, split rail fence is really easy to take down, put back
But
up.
we could put some trees there even and things like that. Low-growing trees because of the wires. Otherwise, they'll look like some of those wonderful trees that you see,
trees.
you know,
The Y-shaped trees.
well, some of them are wide, some are, I don't even know what you would call them.
So how close are we to seeing the final plans? Because I know they're gonna have some issues with silent.
They're in the process of doing land acquisition, and they're expecting not to put a shovel in the dirt until 2020.
And I ran into, why can't I ever remember his name? Dan? No. Dan?
Pastor?
Yeah, Barry, at the fire department discussion, which I'll talk about later on. Is the fire department discussion? I don't know, one of the meetings. I was in Monroe 3 times last week. And I don't think the actual positioning of the road is an issue at this point. There are some other things just talking about the viewpoint.
It wasn't at the fire meeting. It wasn't at the fire meeting.
Then it wasn't the fire meeting, then it was the, oh no, it was the,
The wedding.
no, the county, the proposal that was being done on Antioch Church for R10 zoning, R40 down to R10, which I'll talk about later. Okay, so anything on the park from Mike? Okay. Next item was the new number 11, which is the Heritage plat approval. And we said we were gonna do, and I don't remember exactly the wording now, Cheryl, but conditional approval based upon Shelley's, our planners, sign off that what she has requested is complete, and then I can
I
sign.
make the recommendation to you, yeah.
Right, yeah, I won't sign until I get the recommendation, exactly. That's the bottom line, but I wanted to,
Well, that's what the ordinance says.
right. Oh, you're right.
Write your report up.
Yep,
So we have a clear understanding of the deliverables that need to be either checked off or
Sure.
reconfirmed.
Shelley will have it.
there was an email, and the email says, what Shelley actually gave me a copy of. Review and approval, a final plat, which allows an abbreviated approval process, provided the following items are submitted. Return the attached form completed, $250 check to the Village of Wesley Chapel, that's for additional services, doesn't say that, that's my edit. Paper versions of the plat, mark in red, the areas that are changed are requested, and a written list of the changes versus the currently approved plats, and digitized digital versions of the plats. That's 3 items, basically.
Question, what's the $250 for?
That was for additional,
It's for plat review.
additional services, her
Yeah.
cost, Bonnie's cost.
Well, if Travis is here, he can answer any of those questions, I guess.
Well,
Shouldn't really, but.
go ahead, Travis.
Well, I was just gonna say, I was on the agenda last month and didn't have to pay a $250. And now, more information is needed. All these changes that were made were gone over. And our attorney spoke with George, and my understanding, everything's been looked at and reviewed and approved, and now it's just, the town has the Mylar copy because Union County records Mylars, they don't record paper copies. So, this is just
Question on this.
more and more, I'm just trying to get a platform.
Question on this Mylar, is this something that's a new change, Mylar versus whatever the other option is?
The Mylar has to be produced regardless. I agree with Travis on that.
But is there something?
That's what the Register of Deeds requires.
Right.
Okay, but are we trying to do something new here that we haven't done in the past?
No, I mean, the process in the ordinance is that you would submit 15 paper copies for review. And then only after they've been sort of reviewed, comments have been made, then we tell you to go ahead and present the Mylars. Usually the Mylars are at the very end. For Mylars are the plastic
Yeah.
type, they're really plastic looking. And only then, they're at the very end. We usually always do paper ones. And the ordinance does say you can do a disc or a tape, which I think is just old technology. We like the digital versions of them to keep the records of it because, your village, you just don't have the space to keep all of those Mylars. You've got to have certain map files to keep those Mylars or they'll just crumble and disappear. So
I understand we need the Mylars, but I guess the question is if we had 15 copies that were paper,
No, we
Who-
didn't.
who would look at it?
The only thing that was presented last week were the Mylars.
okay.
No, normally,
There was no saying that anything was coming in, it was just presented. And,
The second version.
yeah, well, you didn't,
Right.
and there are also
originally, it
fees
was
for
provided,
final plats.
originally it was provided for the original final approval. Then we came back, and the council approved it, it was done. And then
There was a
they
cosmetic
came
change.
back with, well, not just cosmetic. There were a couple of changes, mostly, I won't say cosmetic, it's the wrong word. What's the word we
Minor.
use, George?
Immaterial.
Immaterial, thank you.
Okay.
Well,
Immaterial
that's right.
changes with the exception,
Here's what I wrote up for you last time.
with the exception of the building envelope, which we require, it's in the ordinances. But the ordinances also say that it's actually supposed to go back for a full review, and we were trying to ensure that Travis did not have to do that. So I actually, if anybody put it on the thing, was guilty as charged, me, because on the agenda last month, because we thought we would have the material at that point, because you had issued an email at that point, had a discussion, so. And then we didn't, we didn't get any additional information, so we didn't.
I
That's what we
understand
put
why
on
I
the
got
agenda.
involved last month. I guess the question is, since last month, have we gotten
Nothing, no. He hasn't, he also had surgery, which I understand, last week. But, it's been 2 months since, I don't know when that original, when was it written? August 27th.
What's that?
That email, that Bill, you handed Bill.
It's down,
Last Thursday.
Well, I have the other one. That's October 4th. That
we
was just.
we just handed one in.
That
This is
was
August
supposed to pass.
27th.
so what are we gonna do?
I make the motion to give the approval. They submit the information. I want us to look as professional as we can. Unfortunately, I think we've had a couple of challenges with this heritage project that hasn't made the village look so well and just kind of tightening things up.
Which is why, my suggestion is, again, the planners are,
I think that Shelley's doing what she's supposed to be doing.
Yes.
She's saying, hey, there's a cost for us to have her, there's gonna be a cost, if the plat was not changed at all, it'd be a non-issue. But I believe that the $250 is valid. And I think, you know, we have somebody sitting there saying, hey, this is what I need to do, this is what it is, and we're finally like,
And actually, it says 750 for reapproval.
right.
Or
We
750 plus $25.
But that,
For anything over 50 lots,
But that's
you're talking
fair.
about $1,200.
but that was, I understand, and I'm not saying you're wrong in interpretation, but for the changes that were being made, that was gonna be excessive. I mean, it's just.
Yes, and that's
So-
why, consultation with Cheryl, we decided for the abbreviated one, $250. That's what we generally charge for site plans, just looking at them. To try to accommodate to the developer. Also like to point out, he has approved plats, he can get permits tomorrow on the former plat. That doesn't prevent him from us issuing permits. He's already got final plats, he's just making changes.
But he wants to put it to bed too, which I get, you know, so that's why I offered the other process rather than
Right.
waiting till November
We were trying to accommodate.
to try and accommodate,
So if we get those plus the $250, it's a done.
which is in October 4th, those three items. So,
Are you comfortable with $250 being a reasonable compromise?
I am, because
Yeah.
Shelley's saying that it could have been much more, and it's just a abbreviated.
So
Could
you
be could have been well over $1,000 to go
So-
back through the whole thing.
need a motion to approve pending the minor changes that are still to be provided.
So we make that, make a motion
so
saying,
that's it. That you give me as the mayor the approval to sign off as I normally would, pending Shelley's approval of the receipt of the remainder of the.
Right, I give him a
requested
written
items.
report and I'll read
Yes.
it on.
So motion.
so you'll get the money and the changes and,
And then I write him a report. I like to look after my mayors, I don't.
okay.
He signed it, I'm not signing it, but he signed it.
So I make that motion.
Invisible ink.
Do you have that motion, Cheryl?
So I got a motion, do I have a second, please? Amanda, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, item number 12. Mike? That's the mansion?
Yeah, Van Shell. We're on the third round of bids for the Van Shell project, but we finally, on George's recommendation, we got the second round. We had one bid come in. We did not open that bid. We went through the rebid process. We did not have, even though we had some people call in and ask about it, we did not have anybody rebid on the Van Shell. The one bid was reviewed by the Parks and Rec Committee, and their recommendation was to accept the bid of $81,394 and contract with Indian Trail Services for the Van Shell as laid out by Troy Lutman, with the contingency. I think there's a 5% or 10% contingency. 5%. So the bid is to build a van shell for $77,518. There is a contingency allowance for $3,875.90, bringing the total bid up to $81,393.90. Any questions?
So Mike, that's no sound system or anything, just lighting or just that building?
This
and
is the,
van shell?
You saw the original contract for the original plans. It's to build what was on the original plans from back in 2012.
And that's with the stone columns and everything?
Yep. The plans have not changed since they were originally drawn up by Troy Lutman. The only thing that Troy changed was, and this is where the contingency will come in, is the pillars that hold up the van shell. He had them, I think, at 3 feet. He decided to go an extra 1.5 foot to like 4.5 feet because
In the ground.
when the soil gets inspected, since some of that might be fill dirt, they're going to go deeper just to make sure that structurally it is not going to roll over one day. Yeah.
So we had nobody bid on it, but just one guy, that's it?
And this bid falls exactly in line with where it was when we did it back in 2016.
I just think it's a boatload of money for something like that, man. I think we're getting
I know you've
break
done
through the
some,
coals with that, man, but
like I said, we did this multiple times, and we keep coming up with the same number.
And I had asked if anyone had any additional information to present it to Park and Rec to weigh it. So, I mean, I can't, and then we went through the process that we have to go through as a town. So, we did it. So, first of all, I'm gonna go ahead and ask for a motion before we have further discussion. So, see if it has any legs.
I'll motion to accept the bid for the band shell at Dogwood Park in the amount of, do I need to quote the bid amount or the bid amount with the contingency?
With the contingency.
To contract with,
Indian Trail Service.
Indian Trail Services, construct the band shell as blueprinted by Troy Lutman for $81,394, excuse me. We're rounding up that extra 10 cents.
Okay? So we have a motion, and that's in the budget, if I remember correctly. Okay, that's in the, okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Further discussion. I'll ask for the further discussion.
what kind of warranty do we have on that, Mike? Like for the posts, or what kind of warranties do they give us?
I don't know if there was,
Is it the build-in taillight warranty, or is this something? Instant?
I didn't see anything that was
Yeah.
I don't know if there's
it might be
anything
worth-
about a warranty
Was it in the bid documents? I'm trying to
yeah,
remember.
I think there was something about warranty in the bid documents, like,
I don't remember.
for like example, there's a 30-year shingle on the roofing, which is primarily the structure. I would have to go back and research that.
So we're looking basically at 80,
82,
almost 82
81
for structure.
And the
And I
electrical-
know we've talked, I remember John talking about specking out the electronics to make it live and functional.
Mm-hmm.
Performance-wise, what are we looking for?
Well, this week we just completed running the additional electrical circuits to the band shell, so we now have a total of 5 circuits to allow for lights and sound and all the requirements for that. Instruments, if there's going to be a band. Cheryl, do you have the ballpark numbers on the sound and lighting system? I know we haven't officially put the RFQ out, but I thought John had estimated it
40,000.
40,000.
Is that what we budgeted?
Well, how much do we have in the budget currently for the band shell project?
We have 100,000, we have like 7,500 committed to the architect, and then this amount, and then whatever permits or testing, so I think.
We have a separate line item for lights and sound.
No, it's not for licensing. Their budget is separate.
I thought we budgeted 30 for lights.
Let me see.
So it was budgeted separately. So,
And then we had general park improvements as well, which is, I think, we pulled the electrical upgrade from.
if I remember
Oh,
correctly,
it says 40.
Light and sound is 40,000.
if I remember correctly, the full bid, the bid was fully, that's the concrete work, that's all in. Permits.
Yeah.
Well, concrete work, there's those sections of concrete, if I remember correctly, being removed.
Then they have to inspect what's in the hole.
Correct.
And that's where the contingency comes in.
They were built so that they could remove those sections. I mean, that was the way the plan was changed on it to begin with.
Right.
So we could do this properly is the word, I guess.
So I'll just say, it's, to me, I think it's just a lot of money. I don't think this, but I'm done with it. So I'm gonna go for it. I just wanna get it done. I want it in the park. I just think that we're just,
Well, we got the stage built, we just don't have the roof on the stage. That's the part we're talking about.
Any further comments?
Just one comment I'll put out is that Beth went and checked references, and the references were very good.
Right, I saw the references on the document here, which
On
was
the contract.
pretty good. Yep. Okay, all those in favor?
That's my, I was gonna say,
Oh, sorry.
I got Bill's concerns. I mean, I've been sort of thinking about the numbers as they sort of escalate with everything going into the park, and just based on what we just talked about, we're looking at almost $122,000 to get the band shell in and functional, and that's not including the irrigation and, you know, everything else. That's adding up.
I think the Parks Committee would look at this as a potential way of creating funds. They're looking at having events that will be self-sustaining within a couple of years.
I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, it's, you can't have it, it's almost built with, they'll come. I mean,
I, you know, I understand it was put out for bid, there were bids out there, there were alternatives, that wasn't necessarily also done. So,
I'd say
I
we
get it,
beat
but-
that horse and we tried, you know, with all that.
horses in the glue factory.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you have your horse. And I have nothing against horses, I like horses. Okay, so back to the vote. All those in favor for motion to approve the band shell in the amount of $81,394? Okay, all those opposed? Oh, it's over, sorry, I didn't see it at the end. Which one were you? I was approved. I know, you had missed it at the beginning, sorry. Unanimous, thank you. Let's get it rock and roll.
what's the time frame, projected time frame on that?
We told them not to start until the 1st of November, until just after the Fall Dash. Again, we're going to try to tear up everything all at once so that in the springtime we can have nice grass in the park and this will be completed. So we're going to give them a start time anytime after November 1st, and I think there's 6 to 8 weeks completion.
So what are you gonna do with the overseeding? Hold off to the spring, or are you still gonna?
We'll still going to do the overseeding. Because that, the question is what areas will be affected. Now, keep in mind that the sprinkler system runs all the way through the seating area of the band shell, but will not necessarily be affected by the aerating and seating or by the construction. So,
All right, we're gonna move on. Item 13 is consider bids on park gate replacement ranging from 9,174 to 10,540, and budget amendment to fund the expenditure.
right. Let's start off with where the funding will come from. We talked about this at the Parks and Rec meeting. We do have fee and lieu money that we don't pay for this. The fee and lieu money that we have more than enough covers for the cost involved, the numbers here. So the recommendation of the Parks and Rec Committee is to use fee and lieu money for this project. The park gate itself has not been working properly for, I would say, something in the category of months. We started having problems with it after it had been run through by cars, bent, rebent, welded, re-welded. A lot of different things have been done to this. So we started collecting bids for replacement gates, and everybody came up with the same solution: a sliding barrier gate versus a gate that joins at the middle. There's no connection in the middle. The people see it as just something they can put their front bumper up against and push on it until it opens, which just does damage to the gate operator and an expense to us. So the Parks and Rec Committee reviewed the 3 bids and made the recommendation of going with the J&G fencing based on price and the history we've had with them. Not only are they the low bid, they've also been doing the maintenance on the existing gate for the past couple of years. Any questions?
Hold on, before you do questions, I want to do this, keep doing this right. Do I have a motion first, and then we'll have a discussion?
I'm sorry.
Motion and a second.
So my motion would be to contract with J&G Fencing to replace the gate at Delacorte Park in the amount of $9,173.83. I have been also getting, I'm just making a motion.
And the budget piece, too.
and the budget to be coming out of fee and lieu money, which is going to be used in the park.
Okay.
Sorry, my voice is going.
Do I have a second?
And we second that we don't want to necessarily vote for it.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay. Okay, now it's been a second. Discussion, please.
do we have to move the electrical? Does the $9,000, $10,000, does it move the electrical?
One company says that we have to change so the operator so it opens to the right instead of to the left. The other company says we can just cut down a couple of trees and it'll open to the existing side.
Mitigate that?
Which way J&G went with that. The concept is the controller that controls the slide for the gate is electrically powered, and the gate has to be on the same, the electricity has to be on the same side that the gate opens to. So if we were to move the operating system to the other side of the driveway, we would have to upgrade the electrical so it would be bored underneath the driveway and have electrical power on the other side. I'd have to look at J&G specifically, I don't know which way they went with the electrical.
And does this price include a warranty or like service for a year?
I believe it was 3-year parts, 1-year labor. So it's a bad copy.
No ornamental fence said that they had to put the electric on the opposite side for sure. I'm thinking on this one here.
They want fence the other way.
Yeah, I didn't say anything specific for J&G. Did I have that question too? Is there any more electricals?
Excuse me, I'm gonna drink.
If you look at page 3, they're cutting a hole in a 6-inch wide by 26-inch deep across the roadway to install it, so I believe it is doing that.
That's good.
I don't know what that means then.
Was that page 3?
Yeah, in the middle of the page.
I think it's to move the electric to the other side of the road.
Cut down 6-inch wide by 26 feet.
Yeah, because it's high and low, because I'm thinking you still need to loop in the road for when you're coming out to make the gate open.
That's the exit.
So that was even in the other gentleman's, the other company's bid was to put in a better, upgraded conduit underneath somewhere.
Install.
New loop detectors to connect to the existing free exit loop. That was under ornamental fence.
We basically use the gate that separates the Target Shopping Center from the Wesley Oak as a model. We said that's the style and format we wanted.
Do they give us any credit if they are going to remove that gate and take it with them?
Yeah, the price does include removing the existing gate. It's our gate, I think we should keep it. I don't know if we can get anything for it, you know.
That's what I'm just wondering, is there anything we could do with it, or like put it up for bid, or
It's
can we use it somewhere else? I mean,
bent, it's welded, it's re-welded. If you've ever seen the gate operate, the screw, the worm screw that actually operates the mechanism is so bent, the thing wobbles like this as it closes. It's, I don't know if it has any,
so we probably don't want it.
I don't know if it has any value to what's left there. There might be a few dollars worth of pieces of parts.
And that's where I was looking at the alternate bid under ornamental fence, but I also said that, well, wait a minute, that doesn't include the gates themselves.
Right, and that was using the existing gates, because the problem is when the two gates join, they open like a barn door and they close, and there's a gap in between. People see that gap, they say, well, I can get through there, just push it with my car. And it's what screws up the mechanisms that hold everything together.
Right.
They always wanted, the Parks and Rec committee always wanted to go with the barrier gate, but the cost they thought was going to be prohibitive. And they went with the cheap.
Well, there's a couple of things. There's a
Well-
plastic gear in the darn thing, which I don't even want to talk about.
Well, that's designed to break the gears and burn out the motor.
I'll break the gear.
So, but
It's
I don't see.
like on my car, anyway, so sorry, go ahead, man.
I don't see the warranty stuff. That's all. Sorry. And I just because I was curious, so there's about $60,500 left in fee and lieu money for the park. So if we spend 10 grand for this, we're down to 50. So is Parks and Rec okay with being spent down to like what are their, like for the next phase? That means looking 50,000.
The plan was to use that, potentially use that fee with part of grant application as matching funds for whatever. We just had the Public Information Center meeting with the Parks and Rec Committee. We had 2 of them asking what the next step should be in the park. And I'm sorry I didn't prepare anything for that. Whether it's community center, picnic shelters, bathrooms, things of that nature, playground equipment. And the fee and lieu money was meant to be a matching fund for whatever grant they decide to go after next.
And that fund also will be, as these other projects come online, whether it's the Ridge, what? Sorry?
I'm not sure. Has the Ridge been
Education for
on?
Just
I'm not
also-
sure on the,
That,
There's not a whole lot right now coming on into the
well, then you've got Adelaide Estates,
Addison.
Addison Crossing,
Addison.
whatever, the one across from Kendall.
for me, yes. Well, I checked on that today, I don't know, do they have a thing, they're just kind of getting started.
Right. Agreed, they're removing all today they're removing all the brush alongside Otter Road, actually.
Yeah, it looks like they're putting.
10, 12
water
foot.
lines in or something like
So
that.
they're getting ready to put in,
Looks like water lines.
hmm?
Looks like water lines. I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe sewer, they're doing, they've got ground cover, they're doing.
But that's how that gets obviously, you know, that refunded, so, refunded, not refunded, but refunded.
I just personally wanted to know how much money was left in
Right.
there, what the Parks and Rec committee
And
had it for.
So the only thing I might add is that, because I have also had, what is the warranty on that, because I'd like to know that. Is this something that we need to do now? I mean, I think it's something that definitely needs to be addressed for sure, but once we put the lighting and all this stuff into the amphitheater, the speakers and all that, and we have some, because right now it's gonna be just an open band shell, basically, nothing can be, that can hang off the rafters or whatever, but would we be better off waiting and budgeting this in until next year after we?
Well, we've had issues with the current gate not working, and I have been getting several phone calls from local residents wanting to know why there's people at 2 o'clock in the morning in the park. Like they're having a tailgate party, you know, those kind of things. So security is an issue. related to this.
Cheryl, how much have we spent on that? Because I know we've had,
She mentioned in
Quite a
Florida
bit.
City, it was,
We had one major repair when somebody damaged it and we got reimbursed from the insurance. That was about 5,000. Other than that, I mean, it is a nagging problem, but it's usually $180 when they come out. And we've had maybe 2,000 over the last couple of years in those recurring fees. There may be fees in their budget that you could use other than fee and lieu.
Well, the recommendation of the Parks and Rec Committee was to use the fee and lieu money for this item.
well, that was your motion, so too late to change it.
What's that?
That was your motion, so let's leave it as is for now.
Well, I mean, just for like future discussions we're about to have, if we do take this out of fee and lieu, I do think we should look for the funds for the remaining 5 items to maybe come out of the Parks and Rec budget, not to keep taking it out of fee and lieu.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask for a 5-minute break after this item?
Yep. So we have a motion, a second, any further discussion on it? Do you want to request a contingency, if you will, that there is a warranty around it? I mean, I think you budgeted the bill as well.
Yeah.
That's fine with me, but
Yeah, I'd love to see a warranty on that.
what do we
service
think
and-
is fair? I mean, I have no idea what to base it on. Any,
about a 3-year parts and labor.
I think that's fair. That sounds like a good number for me, I don't know.
I'll inquire.
What does,
I don't know, typically with commercial type things like that, what they come with.
does it?
Well,
I don't
keep in
know.
mind that regardless of what warranty you stick on there, if somebody rams into their car, it's not covered.
But it'd be covered by insurance, right?
Yes.
They'd have a hard time crashing through that thing, you
Yeah,
know?
last time somebody went out with like a
We've seen the
sledgehammer,
car there.
sledgehammer or a baseball bat or something heavy, because they beat a metal box this big to death.
Okay, well,
So do we say we're gonna approve it with?
because it may come with more, so maybe a minimum of
Minimum, yeah.
3 years parts and
You
labor.
mean to amend the
Okay, so
motion,
you want,
Amend my second.
move the second, go ahead.
amend the motion to include a minimum of a 3-year parts and labor warranty.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further more discussion? All those in favor?
I'm sorry, I gotta step away. Yes.
Okay, all those,
Have to go.
I'll be right back,
all
I'm sorry.
those opposed? Okay, motion carries 3-1. And taking a 5-minute recess, so smoking if you don't. No, I don't smoke.
Smoking if you got it. You watching something this weekend?
Well, around.
Riverboat Port Bath.
This is the good.
Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Item 14. Mike, I think you're up again, unfortunately. So
We've had,
keep going.
over the last, starting up in 2014, in the last 4 years, we've had several of the concrete barriers broken up and beat up. And I think I showed pictures last time. I was surprised to find out those things are $100 a piece to replace. And we've got a total of 5 of them that are broken. Installation is extremely simple, we just basically put them in place and put a piece of rebar through them. But these are the conditions of the existing concrete barriers. I think,
Hello.
Cheryl, would we need a budget amendment for, or would this come out of
It could come out of other
maintenance?
supplies and materials.
General park maintenance, supplies, materials?
Yeah.
Well, what about what Amanda brought up about coming out of the park itself? Would that be coming out of the
That's the park line, it's the line in the park.
Oh, that's the
Yeah,
one.
we have a-
Oh, that's the line
So
before.
it could come out of this one.
Oh, okay.
Since that one's any less expensive?
We did talk about that, but the idea was to match the existing barriers in concrete so that they would all basically, be the same.
Yeah.
And then, let's keep it, I talked with the manufacturer, they think we can big up even more over the long term, because they're not chemically stabilized or what words they use.
Is there any delivery fee on those? Because they're big and heavy.
I think this is something we can buy locally, Lowe's, Home Depot, that kind of thing. So I'm surprised they're $100, and that's the only thing that scared me, was how expensive the darn things were. They're just a piece of concrete, 6 feet long,
Rebar.
plus the rebar, yeah, the rebar's $3, so.
That's why I'm kind of shocked how easily they break. I guess
Well,
if you
you
hit
hit
them with a car.
You had to run over with cars enough times, and we had a couple people that like to go 4-wheeling through the park before we put some boulders in place. So the motion would be to spend up to $500 to replace the 5 concrete stops.
Okay,
And coming out of other supplies and materials.
Coming out of other supplies and materials.
I'll second your motion.
okay.
Questions?
Got a motion, a second, further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Next one was mine as well. Are we ready to move on, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please, Mike. Item 15.
Consider additional funding for park landscaping in the amount of $5,700 in budget amendment funds expenditures. Before we get on to where
Wait, hold on, Mike, how much was that? Because I didn't have that number on here.
it's on the agenda, it's $5,700.
Item
Okay.
15.
before we get on to the, where to put the money from, let's figure out if we're gonna do this or not. The landscaper will be doing the standard fall grass seeding and aerating that would normally be done whether we were in the middle of a construction project or not. And then we're getting ready to start another construction project in November. So the question is, do we want to spend the extra money to do extra mitigation of grass seed and soil? Is it soil treatment or is it just extra grass seed? I'm drawing a blank here as to whether maybe it's just extra seeding. Me personally, I think we should hold off till the construction's done with the man shell project, which will be starting hopefully in November, and then in springtime we'll address this issue.
I'm with that. I mean, we're not doing a winter fest, so you know what? Save the money for the spring.
Plus, I need to put down grass seed and then turn around and just beat it up with, you know, equipment and materials and everything else.
Do you know if they have a tool called an aerator instead of the core aerator that pulls the plugs out?
I have no idea.
What's it called? It's an aerator, so they use on golf courses. And it has the tines, actually, I've used it on our yard. It's a commercial piece of equipment, but it goes in.
I know how to mow grass other than that. Maybe put down some fertilizer.
So I think we're gonna wait on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a question to ask them if they can do that.
Okay.
So because I'm a liaison for the Parks and Rec Committee, I'll make the motion that we spend the $5,700 additional funding from park landscaping, in the amount of $5,700 for the additional seeding and aerating. Sorry guys, I'm thinking fast here.
Okay, but
I thought you weren't gonna make a motion.
No, I made the motion because I said I would at the
All right.
meeting. Do I have a second? No, I officially asked. But I agree with the rest of council. I think we should do something we address it about this time. On record.
and I agree, just so there's unanimous.
Unilateral?
Or no, it doesn't matter. No, we agree. Okay. Item 16.
Next item is consider request to spend up to $1,000 on park signs. This will basically be signs for hours, and we discussed speed limit signs on the driveway, but we don't seem to have a problem with that. And this would be basically signs for park hours, so people know when the park opens and closes. It was one of the things that we had in the original design for the park, but we omitted for budgeting reasons. Well, this will also be the park rules sign. We originally just wrote the park rules on a piece of heavy-duty paper, stuck it inside the glass display, and that's the most we've ever done.
Can it come out of other supplies and materials?
You know, the funding for it should come out of other supplies and materials for park signs. But the idea was to have a sign as you enter the driveway that says park closes at dusk, park opens to sundown. We have a lot of people that come in there. You know, the gate closes and they use the exit sensor to get out, but they don't realize the park's supposed to be closed at dusk. It doesn't say that anywhere. I think John had a company, I wish John was here, I think John had a company that he found locally that could do it for a reasonable price.
It was just, reason I was asking is a new chamber member, it's a husband and wife, it's fast, so.
I think this would be just like anything else that we would
Good,
get some bids together.
I'll get you that part.
But they would like to spend up to $1,000 of that budget for park signs.
Do we have that same line item?
I mean, again, they can't quote unquote spend the money, so how would that work? They present the bill to you, Cheryl, like
Well,
normal?
they're really not supposed to come up with the bill. They.
Well, they're not gonna do the research.
No, I don't mean they're gonna pay for it or whatever, but they would get the estimates.
Quotes.
Yeah.
in essence. And then you would take care of the payment.
Yeah, well, and Mike would get involved.
Right, agreed. But if that's something the council wants to do, that is, I'm not assuming anything, I'm just making sure we're.
I'll make a motion to approve up to $1,000 to add park signs for hours and rules to come out of other park supplies and insurance.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second? Did you make second, Mike? I'm sorry. Okay, all those in favor, further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? I gotta ask a question. George in the yellow. Item 17A, updated on the hiring of the planning and zoning administrator. I did send an email around to everyone. Unfortunately, 2 of our 3 candidates that we approved, essentially we're looking for additional benefits, I think, of different kinds. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but we have had the medical come up before for the family. We've had Indian Trail does a 401k, for instance, and other towns. So we're back to square one. That's where we're at. I don't think Cheryl and I feel that the other candidates that we had were potential fits for the village. So my general thought was to consider I'll stop there and ask the question before I get into a solution. That was the first one.
I guess my question might be if we're seeing what the ideal candidate, if I say ideal, the options that we picked, what that total cost would look like.
Right.
I know what we talked about salary, but in terms of if we were able to include 401k, other benefits, how does that compare to what we're already doing on the rental program?
Right, and I'll get to that in item C.
Okay.
A little
jump up, yeah.
No, that's fine. So, item 17B is obviously we have to do something in the meantime. The In-Focus contract expires the end of this month. The extension that we did, 1-month extension. Right. So, my suggestion at this point, to allow us sufficient time to do the research, to have a good discussion, getting to the points that you made, and that's really dovetails with 17C, and I apologize for kind of combining them, but I'm going to. To begin doing kind of a survey, an informal survey around us of the benefits that these other towns offer, and once we've got that information, then we can kind of answer the question you asked, Paul, which is how does that compare to the overall expenditure we have versus what we're looking for, which is 4 days of having a planning and zoning administrator here. So, that all has to be weighed, but we don't have the information to do that. I think we've also found, in my opinion at least, that a lot of these changes are typically done at the end of fiscal years with other municipalities. I think that may open our option of people applying further. And I'm talking about, perhaps listing it as early as March or what have you. So we've got March, April, May, June, to actually do the interviews and maybe even have it in place. But we need the information, we need to discuss it.
Well, I have no problem getting the information, but I don't think we should delay after we get the information, rebidding and trying to find a replacement.
That's, again, prerogative, so what does everybody think? I rather not, but that's.
Well, we definitely have to extend the contract for sure, because
Right.
we need that going on. What do we extend it to? Do we say we do that till May?
It doesn't matter because we have a 30-day cancellation policy that we could exercise if need be.
Right, we keep using that.
So I would extend it through the June, but it still has a cancellation clause in it.
Okay.
30 or 60, Cheryl, I ask that all the time.
30.
It is 30, thank you.
But we would also be expecting, if we hired a new person tomorrow, we would expect them to have a 30-day overlap with whoever the replacement is to bring them up to speed on
Right.
existing projects.
Correct. And we knew, for instance, Angela had told me when she was looking at the position initially, that it's probably gonna be a 4 to 6 week process before she was here. You know, because she was out of state, so she's gotta do her position wherever she's at, then she's gotta find a place here, then she's gotta move, and
Well, I make a motion, we extend the in-focus contract to the end of our 2018-19 fiscal year through June 30th.
correct.
Is there a premium on that?
Hmm?
Is there a premium on
I wonder if we
No.
could get her back to the other contract prices.
that? That's what, in hindsight, that's what we should have done, is just renewed the existing contract.
But we thought we were gonna have someone.
Okay. Water over the dam. I mean, yeah, I did too. So, do you want, we didn't have a second, but assuming, do you want to make that, do we
And
want to
ask
say,
if we could go back to our regular pricing. Get
or
her back.
cost no higher than we're currently paying, or do you want to, I mean, obviously we want to go back to the original if we can.
Yeah. We're paying a lot more for the zoning person than we were last year, like 25%.
25% more?
Yes. Goes on a short term.
Whatever the best deal we can get.
Really, I don't think we need her 2 days a week. We need
Oh,
more.
we still have,
We're seeing what's happening now with some of our, no, I don't want to go there right now. I don't. I mean, I'm only one person, I'm not even vote with you guys.
all right.
So,
So maybe we make
her
that
motion was,
To extend the contract to June 30th and try to get the
Or are
best
we gonna
pricing we
Are
can.
we gonna stick with Shelley and Susan?
we don't know yet. We won't know.
Well, I guess, should that be part of the negotiation?
Well, yes, oh, you mean, if it's going, I don't know if it's going to be Shelley and Susan, but it's going to be 2 people, yes. 3, because John's part of that, Bill's part of that too, I keep calling him John, Bill.
I think Mike's saying he doesn't want to get new faces and new people.
Well, I guess the question is, are we gonna have,
Continuity.
That's
No.
what I would say.
I don't think that's his question.
question is, we're gonna have Susan 2 days, Shelley 2 days, plus the contract
Yes.
code enforcement, or are we going to ask for one person to take over from now till June 30th to do all 3 positions?
You do pay
Or some
less,
combination.
you do pay less for the zoning than you do for the planner.
Correct.
Okay, so just keep it as is the motion.
Correct. Do I have a second? First? Second. Any further, is there a second? Thank you. Do we have further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. And as I said, this is more an FYI, there's no motion. I've asked Cheryl to go begin looking at the areas around us for their, see what they do for their different their employees. I think we need to figure out if we're, I do know, and I meant to add this earlier, it doesn't make any difference, doesn't change anything, but right now employment's at a fairly historic low, unemployment that is, which basically means the people seeking jobs are seeking, they can wait to get what they want. Because they have a job. Not that we don't want somebody that doesn't have, it does matter, but we're not gonna get anybody, I think, if we gotta repost and all that, that's, 6 more weeks, 8 more weeks, easily. We're into December at that point.
I think what we should do is maybe let Cheryl do that, get this contract extended, and then let's start looking around, find out what the towns are doing.
Right.
And then maybe we could have a special meeting and just discuss what this, I mean, I deal with hiring people all the time, and Paul's financially astute out there as well, yourself. You know, we're all, I think we can sit down and say, okay, what are we looking like for a part-time person for this or that, and kind of make something happen.
Okay.
Kind of, you know,
All right.
almost like the
And
band
they
going
come
on
out
and on.
that InFocus may be the best option to get the highest quality person that we can, right? Or
Could
someone.
be anything.
Again, it didn't rule them out. I'm not ruling anything out right now. I'm just, we're taking care of the immediate issue and trying to address the longer term. So we're being proactive as we can. I don't think any of us expected the outcome we got, to be honest. At least I did not. I will say that. I'm not gonna talk for anybody else. All right, item 18, I'm sorry, is to review the policy banning burning in the park and possible revision.
Now, this is my item. We have a policy where we're able to apply for burn permits and be able to burn branches and park debris in the park. And there was a change in that policy a couple of years ago, and we just went through a hurricane where we've got a lot of large branches that can't just be thrown off in the woods that need to be piled up and gotten rid of. But because of the policy we had put in place 2 years ago, we can't do that. So we've got a pile of branches that, you know, we can either pay somebody to haul and take them off, or we can just pile them up and burn them like this is what we used to do. So the motion would be to revert back to our original policy of allowing burning in the park, provided we get the required Union County permit and meet all the Union County requirements.
Where would you burn them? Like, where do you do that at?
In fire pit,
Fire pit.
which is away from any structures or trees or anything that could potentially.
That is between,
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Yeah, I was just, yeah, I know where it's at. I just wasn't sure where, like, you know, the parking lot, but yeah.
not just anywhere.
So we have water at that location? Access to hose or anything?
We have this water standpipe in the park that's, I don't know, 100 feet away.
Do we have like I mean, when you do something like that, does people call fire departments? Hey, could you have
No,
trouble
we
stand by?
apply for an official burn permit, there's an application process.
Which you include in his motion.
Yeah, so you just go out there and haphazardly burn stuff. You have to apply through the county and get that approved, and, which is what we've done in the past. And I always make sure Cheryl gets a copy of the permit. It's usually for a period of time, like, you know, you can do the same thing for your house. If you want to have a fire to burn leaves for the fall, you have to apply for a permit. And it's a lengthy process, that you're not going to put your, you know, burn barrel or your burn pile anywhere near your structure, you know, near a tree canopy. You know, it's a lengthy process, but it's not a hard process.
So I've got a motion, again, we're getting out of sync a little bit. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Only thing I will add, it really wasn't a policy, but I'm not gonna, it was a vote that the council directive should at that point.
To undo the ban.
No, it's fine. Your point's taken, but, you know, to me, a policy is much more formal.
Right.
And we're not always formal. Okay, then, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Burn away.
Thank you. Now he's got to play. Item 19 is consider amendment expenditure of funds to appraise a 2.63 acre parcel owned by the village behind 201 Central. I don't know how much to ask for there. That's what I forgot. Dang it.
No question, how much it would cost?
Do you remember? You probably don't. What, I thought it was like 600, 750, something like that, the last time we had an appraisal.
At first, I was thinking that we had to go through that thing to exempt ourselves, but appraisals aren't one of the things.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So, a couple questions. Well,
Yep.
I'm premature with my questions.
You what?
I'm premature with my questions. Continue.
Oh, no, so, you know, I just think we actually have two parties that have expressed a an interest in the property.
Are we
The
allowed to
fitness,
ask
is it
who
the
they
fitness
are?
center?
He didn't want that, I don't know, because he didn't want it to interfere with his current lease, but yes.
Okay. I know he told me about that too.
Well, he came to us 4 years ago.
Right, I remember that, yeah.
And, yeah, and given the county's EMS process procedure, because that was originally one of the big uses that was there, that'll never be used for an EMS station. There is no EMS stations.
They float around.
Correct. And the other one is from a developer who we've dealt with before, and he's interested in it for what it's zoned, office institutional. So, yes, sir.
The question is, once it's appraised, how long is the appraisal typically good for? A year, 6 months, I don't know.
Good for it. Good for it as willing as long as anybody wants to accept
Accept the value.
because it's a valuation shop.
It's just a value at a point in time. I mean, the economy could get good or bad tomorrow, I'm sorry.
Right.
I don't mind spending that kind of money to have it appraised, provided we've got somebody, like I said, who's interested in
One person is
entering
asking,
negotiations about it.
one person is asking what the next steps are.
Sorry, this is my doctor.
This is
She's
your medical-
delivering
Do you have
much needed prescription.
Yes, I got a note from the doctor.
Thank you, honey.
I have a question. So,
Yes.
I mean, come on, developers, they know how much the property's worth. Us getting an appraisal is. So if we get an offer on that, someone makes an offer, don't we have to put out a notice for so many days for other people to make like counter offers?
Correct.
So what if we waited to get an offer, and then if we got it, we have our 60 days to get an appraisal to find out if that's a fair offer?
Because I wouldn't want to put out a notice. See, I think the other way around. I wouldn't want to put out a notice if I felt the offer was so low, we were lowball. It's village, it's citizens, taxpayer-owned property essentially, which I know you understand. So I want to make sure right up front that we're being offered, because I've already heard discussions, well, the back of the property slopes down. I don't care. It's 2 point whatever, 63 acres, and the value is the value. You're not gonna undersell me.
I guess the question is, if you're having questions like that, and I know some people in the past have looked at that property, saying, yeah, but I only want the good part, I don't want the crappy part in the back.
Right.
Do we appraise it as the whole property? Do we have to appraise it the front half versus the back half?
That's up to council, but my opinion is the whole
I
thing.
think we just do it, all right, what are we gonna do with the bad half?
Well, not only that, it's the back of the property.
Right.
Then you run into
Easements
access.
getting in, and, yeah.
So if somebody approaches you and says, look, I'd like to buy that 2.63 acres, but I only want the 2.63 you can keep in the back.
Too bad.
We're going to sell all or none.
Yeah, I think that's.
2.63 acres, yeah, I mean, it's not that's not a big parcel of property, I hate to say it.
I agree, I just don't want to find out that really what we're trying to appraise is just the first half of it, and then we're going to split it up.
As long as this council is in agreement. I keep saying this because I don't make those decisions.
You get the good with the other.
alone.
Exactly.
You may be overpaying for the good part, you're
I mean,
overpaying.
that's what we're having arguments, not arguments, discussions with property owners all the time of their property being, and that'll come up in my comments later on, they've got a ravine, just like I keep calling it Adelaide, what's the name of it? Addington Crossing, the new development there. They have a wetlands floodplain going through the middle of the property. So what they do, well, they had the fortunate property of having a road that accesses the back of the property and 84 Potter Road, that runs along the other side. So they're gonna have two entrances, basically. They're not gonna have connectivity between because it's very expensive to build the structure going over the road, over the wetlands.
If we've got somebody interested in the property, I think it makes it a stronger position for us to go into negotiation if we know what the property's worth, and not go into the negotiation with, they're going to tell us what they think they
currently zoned office institutional.
Correct.
What would we do with the funds? Like, let's say we sold it, would it go into just a general fund, or is
Yes.
it just goes back?
It's not fee and lieu, it's general fund.
And I don't think we can negotiate a private sale. We have to.
No, we have to, there is a process we will have to follow as one of the things was upset bid, they call it. What Amanda was referring to before, that, when somebody makes an offer, then you have to advertise. And then if we feel the offer, we don't have to advertise if we feel the offer is fair, number one, but then then we have to advertise, and if somebody comes in with a higher bid, we're free to take the higher bid, so.
And we vote on whether or not to shut down.
Correct.
I see.
Have we ever had that property appraised at all?
Never.
That was donated, we never did.
Do we know the tax value?
Offhand, I don't. When we first got it, the county had it appraised as commercial, and when it got into our hands, we objected to that, and
Yeah, the first tax bill was
appraised it, yeah.
ridiculous.
I just would make a motion not to exceed $1,000.
And if it's higher than that, then I'll be back next month.
So, why don't you make that motion, I'll second that.
Make the motion to give back Brad or Cheryl the approval to seek an evaluation or appraisal not to exceed $1,000 on the town parcel to determine the value.
Second that motion.
Okay, any additional discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Opposed? Okay,
What line item will that come out?
that's the next piece. I don't know, what do we got? Other than
We'll
contingency.
take it from FEMA.
What's that?
We'll take it from FEMA.
No,
Take it from the parking,
Park, you can't,
I'm only kidding.
you cannot do that. Are we limited to contingency at this point?
For that small dollar amount, there should be something we can,
We could probably move it from engineering consulting to appraisal fees and professional fees.
what do we have appraisal fees now?
We don't have appraisal fees
So you want to create that category?
here.
Engineering consulting, okay, we've got money in there?
Yeah.
I didn't look, I should have looked. That's
We
fine.
haven't been spending much on it.
Okay,
It makes sense to me.
so can I have a second well, we took a 3-1 vote, so can I have a second motion to move the money from engineering consulting to the appraisal fees?
So motion.
Can I have a second? Okay, all those, pick
Second.
one. They both raise
Pick
their hand
one.
at the same time. All those in favor? You in favor there over there?
Yes, sorry.
All those opposed? Okay. You still don't have to sell it, by the way.
No, the value from a professional.
Okay, item 20 is the discussion of annexations and stormwater issues, which we kind of discussed with John. What else did we have to talk about here?
It was about whether or not, didn't you talk about at planning board, if properties came in with problems, are we expected to fix them, and is it a go-around? Is it a way the developer can go around Wesley Chapel? You can build a neighborhood and be like, oh, hey, now I want to annex into Wesley Chapel. Wasn't that the planning board discussion?
You can, but I'm not sure how we would prohibit. You can't, or we could, you could say, okay, you're not coming in because you don't have proper stormwater.
Or a caveat that we aren't responsible for your stormwater?
Well, we're not, if it's been approved by the county anyway.
We're not.
Nope.
It's just a concern. I think down the road, you're setting yourself up for problems because these developments don't have any stormwater under the county, yet they're right next door to developments that we're making create stormwater, and
Did Bonnie,
it's not a good mix.
did Bonnie chime in on this at all?
Yeah, well, I talked to Bonnie because I said, oh, Bonnie, what? And she said, well, the county really doesn't have any, and then I talked to county staff and they said, yeah, there's no stormwater, we don't make them do anything.
How do they exempt themselves from the state stormwater regulations?
They're not a phase 2 or whatever, they don't have a stormwater program with the county.
But they own, no, they don't. If you own, they don't have those along their roads.
Yeah, and they don't charge a
That's what it
stormwater
is.
fee. You would get a stormwater fee if they were phase 2.
No, well, no, I remember going through, having us twice. Matter of fact, you remember that.
Right.
We exempted ourselves, they came back and, we're getting on a case of state, and we said, no, we don't own any roads, we don't own any, piping under the roads for the stormwater runoff.
The trouble is when anybody complains to the county, to Public Works, they immediately hear, oh, it's in Wesley Chapel, call Wesley Chapel. And we don't have any stormwater program, and then here's these developments. Like I looked at Adelaide Estates, and there's no stormwater pond there. There's just, strangely enough, there's like a lot on that side of the street and a lot on that side of the street. It kind of looks like a stream might come through it, but there's no house on it for some reason, so.
So what if we annex the community like that in, and then all of a sudden start flooding one of our
It was
village
originally approved
residents?
by Union County.
Right, I mean, what would be the recourse? Like if somebody says, hey, now my house is flooding, they built this and they built it through.
Well, there is none. There is none, but there would be none even if we didn't annex them. I mean, it doesn't, us annexing them does not
So we're not
either
accepting
solve
responsibility
or does not mitigate us from that or solve it. It doesn't do either.
So it doesn't affect us no matter what.
Well, the annexation part, obviously it affects us because they don't have any,
Right?
but, I don't know how we solve that issue either. We get our power from the state as a municipality, but the counties have power over they have oversight over municipalities to a small degree. So it's a problem in need of a solution, but I don't know what the solution is.
I'd really like to get Bonnie involved in this discussion more in depth.
Probably something to think about. And then where would they pop up around us? Where could they potentially be built a community that would be that,
Well, the next one would be
All of them.
the American College community on Airport Road, the other one that's.
Or any of our holes, right?
Or any of the holes, or
Any of the donut holes, yeah.
most, we've got a couple of big donut holes. Let me take that back. But anything upstream, anything by the main streams,
And unfortunately, it's kind of a Union County problem because the eastern part of the county's a good bit different, more agricultural, but it's going to be growing.
Right.
And I think the big push should be uniformity to a certain degree.
Then,
should we hold off on this until we talk, like Mike said, speak with Bonnie, or just, I really don't know this enough to really make a good judgment on it.
And this is all Bonnie does,
Mhm.
so I'd really like to get more input from Bonnie.
sure.
And what does she do if she encounters a Union County property having issues onto a municipality?
Probably says.
We just tell homeowners it's their own problem.
That's, but that's regardless of whether they're annexed in or not, that's my point.
All right, so in reality, what you're saying then really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's not, we can't say, oh, you want to annex in, you got to put retention ponds
The
in.
call, the only issue that does matter, and I will go to that, was that we'll get the call first,
Right.
rather than the county, but then, per Cheryl's point, she's 100% right, when Cheryl gets the call, when the county gets the call, and they hear it's in Wesley Chapel, the call comes back here anyway. And then we have to explain that the county allowed them to build their subdivision without any stormwater, provisions.
And like Bill said, you can't go back and retroactively, but
Now, the only other thing is to go back and get the county to start changing, but good luck.
So really, this is kind of a dead issue.
I don't know, I mean, I'm willing to have more discussion on it, I'm not trying to put it to bed, I'm just saying, I kind of bounced this one around in my head for quite a while, trying to figure out. But I think Mike had a good point, if we can, we haven't seen Bonnie in a long time. If she'd be willing to come down and talk to us a little bit about stormwater. Some night. See what's on the agenda in November, if she can make
We
November.
haven't seen Bonnie in a couple of years for the council meeting.
I think the planning board a couple years ago.
I think your comment too is good, is maybe it's something that the council and the mayor could discuss in open communications with the county. Because that's
Yeah,
where the
I want to
problem
bring it up.
Oh, I was very similar to that solar question as well. County's working on language on their side. They approve a piece of property for solar farm, and then all of a sudden they want to bring that into the county, into Wesley Chapel. If that doesn't align with,
It's grandfathered at that point, actually. So, should be grandfathered, yeah.
I'm gonna tell John you said solar farm. You're in trouble.
what is it?
Solar power generation.
Generating facility. All right, well, let's see if we can get Bonnie. Okay, next item on the agenda is to call for a closed session for General Statute 143-318.11A56 to consider performance of current employees.
So motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay.
So welcome, can I stay out here? I say welcome, can I stay out here?
No, you still have to come. I have that authority.
No.
No.
I'll sit on the far end of the table so I don't affect everybody.
Should we come out of closed session?
We have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you. And then item 22 is actions arising out of closed session. Would someone like to make the motion?
So,
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Bill.
no, go ahead, you do it.
My voice is fading, so go ahead.
Okay, so I make a motion that we increase the village clerk's salary by 3%, and that the finance officer and administrative assistant salaries be left as is.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
So second?
Okay, any further discussion? Oh, we can't do that. Anyway, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Who is the second? Mike?
Yep. Okay, council comments. Mike, will your voice is lasting? Do you have anything? Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I'm trying to be sympathetic.
I apologize for my infecting you all. No, the first question I had was, hopefully we can all attend the Fall Dash event, and specifically the 12 noon flag raising ceremony at Dogwood Park on October 27th. There's going to be a slew of people that have been invited. There is a meeting tomorrow night specifically about that to work out the final details, but it looks like it's going to be well attended. We're praying for good weather. If we have council members show up for that, do we have to put a notice out? I don't think we're talking about town business, but we are going to have
Just don't discuss town business.
it's just going to be
Yeah.
ceremony
Yeah.
for the flag raising thing.
Go ahead.
I would encourage my fellow council members to attend. The other thing I wanted to give a short update with is I went to the last meeting of Amanda's group, the Western Union County Leadership Forum, or whatever they're calling that group these days. And they're really starting to congeal into I think a group that's going to make some good things happen as long as we work together. We talked about how we can, what things we can work together on. You know, we don't take now money for roads, but the ones that do, maybe they can get together and negotiate better contracts for potholes. We talked about negotiating contracts, more group contracts for inspections, like stormwater drainage, things like that. We said that the group really wouldn't get formally recognized until we show them a way that councils would start recognizing the group. And I said the best way to show that is show that we're saving the taxpayers money. There was a lot of things that we discussed, but to be honest, I just don't have the energy. It's going to, I think, turn into a good group of collaboration, would be a good word, between the different municipalities and working together and working with Union County. So, good group that got started recently, and I think there's some lofty goals that are achievable.
Okay, well,
Just interesting to attend the fire funding meeting tonight. Just seeing a lot of different options and information, just learning as much schedule. And moving forward, the attendance so far seems to be sort of low with the trial project with the Life and Business Wesley Chapel, whatever you want to call it. Although still not
business association.
Yeah, not affiliated with the town, just thanks for letting me use the space. Well, Dean Sambo is gonna be the first speaker.
Okay.
And we'll just see how it goes.
What is that?
October the 16th, Tuesday morning.
Okay. Bill?
I just, I just want to thank, I think it's Pastor Hopkins at Southbrook, is that right?
Richard.
Richard Hopkins? Yeah. So I know he, Mike, I believe, sent out that email about, him wanting to have the council members there and pray for the town and all. I responded to him and let him know that I would be available on that Sunday. But I just wanted to say publicly that I appreciate that. I appreciate any prayer. So for him to be thinking of us in that capacity, I was grateful.
He's moved on, by the way. Bill, in case you didn't notice that.
Well, he will be.
His last day was yesterday.
Oh, was it?
Oh,
But not from Earth.
No, he's moving to.
Oh, I thought you meant he passed. Oh, okay, he's
No.
alive. I'm like, wow, now I feel like I should have went.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
More
Any-
choice of
anything
wording.
No.
He's in the process of relocating to Atlanta.
And
I'm just thankful that tonight we showed that we could work together and be respectful when we have different opinions. Very refreshing.
yeah, I appreciate council. I'm sorry, anything else?
No, sir.
All right, so I got a couple of real quick things. Fire tax discussion with the county. If they go with a countywide fire tax, Wesley Chapel's member, the fire department tax is separate than the towns. Would go, theirs is already at 3 point, I can't remember now, 3.462 or something like that. It would go up 60-70%. Yeah, to 6 cents, 6.116, if that was done in that manner. Now, the meeting was to talk about various options, but that was one of the options. And they wanted input back from some of the towns. Some of the towns were being, they had pretty good attendance, the meeting room was full. And
My fire tax was going up 60%, I would attend.
I spoke
Why is
up,
it going up so much?
well, because
Proposed.
He's turning the option.
there was, again, it was one of the options, but because the eastern side, there's two main reasons. Reason number one is there are only 5 towns out of the 13 towns in Union County that use fire tax. The others use a flat rate, which is what we used to be. before we voted to accept that years ago, because we felt that as values of properties increased, et cetera, you should be paying, your tax rate would, if at a percentage, would continue to fund services, increase service, fire services. Flat rate is capped at $100 per home annually, and or or less, depending on whatever that jurisdiction says. So there are only 2 counties in the entire state out of 110 counties that use that have any flat rate. I think one is Buncombe, or I think it's Brunswick, thank you. Brunswick County, and the other is Union. It's proven not to be Brunswick has the same problem. They came up with a different solution and had the legislature considering, or they passed, considering, I think, some new structure that is really complicated. The value of the acreage in the home and the businesses pay different than this. And I don't know who's going to orchestrate it, but let's give somebody a job for life. So as far as we go, I made it known that we want to keep the fire tax and pay for the services we get. 66% of the population of the county is in the 5 tax rate municipalities, which leaves the other ones struggling a bit to pay for, I wouldn't even say like services, the word was used, base services, but what is a base service? Well, it depends. If you're in a farming town, it's going to be farming area, it's going to be a lot different than in a suburban area that's got a lot of homes, etc. I don't know how they're going to solve that. One of the things one of the other options is maybe part county tax and part, because right now the county actually is giving money to some of the other towns, and Wesley Chapel, not just Wesley Chapel takes some as well, for additional funds. So I don't know how you're going to be fair about it. And secondly, I think was brought up to me that in the one proposal for the county tax rate, that the the county manager would have the authority to give out the monies to everybody. That's not an elected position. On camera. Oh, well. That's not an elected position. And Cindy Cotto, I respect her a lot. She's the county manager, so this is not a Cindy Cotto comment. It's just, if I have no control over either the fire departments or the person giving allocations out, how am I going to be comfortable with supporting that kind of I do have on other taxes, I can vote the county commissioners out, I can vote, So, I don't know. It's a hard decision, but somebody's gonna have to come up with something.
I guess I'm not really understand that process. So we have Wesley Chapel, it's Wesley Chapel Fire Department. Do we get any, like a discount because we've got this fire department? Does this fire department respond to other areas, like other towns?
Yes.
And do we get reimbursed for anything for that?
They cover Marvin in its entirety, they don't cover Weddington almost in its entirety. They've got 3 stations because they took over Providence,
Right.
Fire Department on Beulah. They cover a little bit of Minnow Springs. They cover, trying to think of what else.
Lots of county areas.
And lots of county areas.
They have their
areas in
own
between.
taxing base, which encompasses, parts of Wesley Chapel, and like he's saying, all these other towns. They have a much, much bigger taxing base. than
They
we
do. They have a bigger taxing base, but they also have a bigger area to cover. So, again, they've allowed this thing because it was volunteers. And the volunteers put a lot of effort into developing what they did. But now, it's not so much volunteers, it's a lot of paid hours now. So we've started, the model is shifting, but the financing piece hasn't caught up.
How long, you said they've been talking about this since 2010?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember
What does the
attending.
business pay for their car? What does the business pay? Is it based on
The business pays the same rate as everybody
It's
else.
like this 3-cent rate.
Mhm. Yeah, same rate as everybody
So
else.
Target pays
Now.
the same rate as everybody else.
Well, it's percent, based on the value of the property, so.
So the Wesley Chapel Fire Department, I mean, other than, God forbid, we have a fire he's right here, it doesn't really benefit us in this whole cost tax increase or anything like that. There's no like, hey, you guys got the fire department here. you guys
No
should
increase
give us
yet.
No, all right, but if it happens,
If it happens,
Well, the thing we're
No.
benefiting from is the volume of residents.
Right,
We're
we are.
self-funded. So the other model, as Brad was saying, which seems to be leaning that way, is the eastern part of the county has lower density in it. They're really struggling to afford modern, up-to-date fire services, radios, all that. But then you've got emerging growth with the expressway. And so like Brad had indicated, if they go with the model with the, I don't want to call it base tax across the board, our tax rates could go up.
so we're basically kind of subsidizing the east end at that point.
well, and what I think they should do is an interim, and I made this point after the meeting to James, who was the guy orchestrating this, is that maybe everybody should go to the, have to go to vote. Every municipality will have to vote for a tax rate process to get off the flat fee. Let's see how that works first. Now they did show what some of the rates were, so some people, like we pay 624, I think it is, or something like that, 642 cents. And I think some of them are close to 10 cents, for instance, already. Or would be under a tax rate because they have less density, but they're gonna pay for the same, not the same, but
Comparable service for
comparable service.
less density.
Yeah, so
So nobody can be happy about that. So maybe they'll think of something different.
Well, keep in mind that John Q. Public in Wesley Chapel does not know that we have no control over the fire department.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know that. I really did. That's why I was wondering. It says Wesley Chapel. It's
look, sometimes, I'd love to do this sometime for a big meeting. Is just have it up on there and you overlay the fire districts, and then you overlay the school districts, and then you overlay the postal districts, and not one of them align with each other.
You don't control the roads, the schools, the fire department,
Anyway,
but it's called the Wesley Chapel Fire Department. You would think the mayor would have some input.
that's why I thought it was ours. You know, we benefit from
No,
it.
it doesn't work that way.
But we're also covered by like 3 or 4 different fire departments.
parts of Wesley Chapel also get Middle Springs covers part. Yeah, absolutely true.
I had 4 fire trucks come to my house after I moved in within 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, if they don't get there within 8, you've got, with a fire, depending on the fire, that's typically what the damage goes beyond saving the house.
Well, they had every fire chief in the county there.
That's right. Yeah. And not so many towns. All right, I'm not done yet.
Oh, I thought you were.
No, I wanted to keep that short, but anyway, it was a good discussion. R40 to R10 parcel on AR Church. They're dealing with a very similar situation to Adelaide, see Addington Crossing with the wetland in the middle. And so they're trying to make up for that by increasing density, but they're going from R40 to R10.
That's a big drop.
And so the hearing was the first, the actual vote on it will be the 15th. When the their planning board heard it, they were missing members and they tied 2 to 2. So it got moved up with basically no recommendation. So it's up to the county commissioners.
They can do that?
Same thing happens here. You only have a certain period of time if the planning board doesn't make a recommendation, I forget if it's 30 or 60 days, after the submission, I think it's 60.
Defaults out.
Then it moves up to the council. Council votes on it.
Are they looking for any input from neighboring municipalities that will be directly affected?
Well, the Weddington mayor was there, she did not speak, although one of the council members did. I spoke, and they had from, I can't think of the plantation, it was, no, I don't remember the name of the subdivision, but it's a subdivision that showed up in,
What Lake Providence?
no, it wasn't Lake Providence, it was something. But they had 40 people show up in red shirts, so, and they had a couple nice presentations, honestly.
Well, they should just let them do the R10, and then they can annex it to Wesley Chapel.
Or wedding.
Don't come in. They're closer to Weddington, so actually they would not be allowed to annex into Wesley Chapel unless
We still have to deal with traffic and.
well, that was the comments, the traffic, the schools,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
fires. I brought up the St. John's Forest fire 6-8 years ago where 3 houses almost went up because they're so close to each other.
This is
One
a
house
three-story,
burned, the other one started, and the other one started melting because they had vinyl siding, but, I mean,
so 3-story property, 3-story structure.
don't know where that's at right this minute. We went to it, we talked about the last
Yeah,
meeting.
I thought it was 3 stories high and
Yeah, that's the 182
ridiculously
units.
dense.
That's the 182 unit next to, Francisco's
Munis Market.
Mark. Senior facility, 182 units on 3 floors.
Who's gonna pay for the fire and rescue to get those people?
Well, I asked the chief if he'd been asked about it yet, because I said, is there gonna be a sprinkler system in that building? He hasn't been asked yet.
But even that, you gotta get those people out.
I know,
They're slow.
but I want the fire sprinkler there first.
I jumped 30 feet,
Um,
you stay on fire.
Just a quick aside, the purple ribbons for Turning Point, they had a ceremony last Thursday for the 51 people of various ages that died because of domestic violence. So I was given the privilege of reading, I don't know if I had 10 or 12 names to read of the people during the ceremony, as were the board for the Turning Point. And very nicely done. I wouldn't say there was a huge attendance, maybe about, had a couple core groups, maybe about 100 people, but that's where we're in Purple Ribbon.
Was that Union County only, or was that like statewide,
I
or?
believe that's Union County. It was aged 7 months up to 84 years. So baby are killed and well, a few older people. My last point, we're already past the witching hour. Just everybody be aware that there is a hurricane brewing in the Gulf of Mexico that's coming right up. It was going to shift further to the coast. The last map I saw showed it closer to Charlotte again. So we're on the left side, which is good in terms of both wind and rain being less than on the right side, but if it stays that close, we may not have either option. We may get both. Just so be aware, that won't be till Thursday-ish.
Keep us informed.
Not bad for us. They don't need any more rain in the coastal areas.
But it's gonna go right out that way. That's what it's doing. It's coming up and it's going out. It'll go out somewhere between the Carolinas and Virginia, North Carolina and Virginia border. At least that's, these things can change depending on the steering currents. Anyway, motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll make the motion.
Mike raised his hand good for that one, man, he's okay home.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
All those opposed?
I need to get to bed.
We'll get you some chicken soup.
Fast as our move tonight.
Actually, I do have some chicken soup.
Oh.